think we're set to proceed. We've got our quorum. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, and thanks for your patience. First of all, this is a technical glitch that we didn't expect. But welcome to the September 10th, 2024 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. As a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves. We ask that we invite everybody to speak and ask questions and make comments, but to do so, we do ask that you identify yourself as well. This is an open meeting, law and compliance with rules and regulations of the Commonwealth. So your identity is important to us as part of the record. My name is John Kiernan. I'm just reading across the screen. Hans
Finlingen.
Wendy? Wendy, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Wendy. Anyway, she's waving to everybody. That's the introduction. That's Wendy Carpo. Thank you. Arthur, can you introduce?
Arthur Doyle, Commission member.
All right, Ingrid.
Ingrid Beatty, Commission member.
Tom Palmer.
Tom Palmer, member, and I stipulate that's Wendy in the blue.
Thank you very much, sir.
I got it to work now, John. Hi.
Hey, very good. Very good.
I'm a very grateful commissioner.
So thanks. We lost some time, and I do appreciate members of the public bearing with us through our technical difficulties. So we'll go through the agenda as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Number one is 24 Wentworth Farm Road. And this is the update on a enforcement order that was issued to correct a situation that was not in compliance with the order of conditions. And we've got Deb Keller here with us. And Deb, I know you were out there, and Steve Ivas was there, and I think Ned Cochran was there, and others last week. Can you give us an update? And there are two big problems. I want to say big. They're just two, sections of our discussion tonight. One is the capacity of the roof drainage system in the backyard, and the other one is the efficiency or efficacy of the wall, which was not built as the approved design. It goes back to the original order of conditions. And for the public's benefit, we meaning the Conservation Commission, has been to the site a lot. I know I've been there probably five times at least. And I know most of the members have been there all that time. So we have a pretty good sense of what's going on. But Deb, if you can keep in mind that members of the public may not have that. And actually, I see Jeff Kane here too, and he was the original architect of the approved plan. Architect's the wrong word, but designer of the engineer designer of the original plan. Go ahead, Deb.
Sure. So Deb Keller with Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. And I would stipulate if I misspeak at all, Jeff, please speak up and correct me from, I am just reviewing plans that have been provided to me. And I'll start off with, I was asked by the commission to take a look at the septic design and as-built plan and site inspection, which includes the boulder retaining wall on the down gradient side, as well as just looking at the site in general from a drainage perspective and evaluating the Cultec chamber roof drainage system in the rear yard. Starting out, I think a few months ago. So let's see, June 14th was the first time I was out on the site. And at that time, this property is right at the end of the cul-de-sac of the development. And there is a rain garden in the cul-de-sac island, which needed some maintenance and some planting. And so it was indicated to me that during storm events, there was potential for flooding and overflow from the rain garden, which this site would have received some of that stormwater runoff, which runs the driveway and into the garage area. So as they were building the site, this is history that was told. What I was told is that to address some of the drainage coming down the road, additional catch basin as well as a trench drain along the face of the garage were installed and tied into the roof leader system, which goes back to the subsurface chamber system in the rear yard. That's the drainage. Septic as-built was shown for the septic system, which was installed if you're standing at the cul-de-sac to the right of the home. And the design originally included a block retaining wall that was approved through the site for the site plan. As it was constructed, and you can see
I'm sorry, what did you say, Deb? What was approved by the site plan?
Through the site plan, through conservation as well, was a block retaining wall, meaning a modular block wall.
Okay,
So it would be similar to what you see on the adjacent property.
yes. Should be essentially solid, would it not?
No, you'll have weep holes in it, but yes.
Right.
Yes. So just like concrete block walls laid up against on top of each other, whereas what was constructed on this site was a natural boulder wall. And if I could share my screen, I could show a quick photo if that's helpful.
That would be helpful. Hans, can you help?
Yep. Should have the ability to share.
Fantastic. Yep. It's over this side. I'm gonna go. This one, I think, share. Yep, there we go. So hopefully, can you see a photo?
Yes, we can see it, Deb.
Great. So this was a photo that I took back in June. As you can see, grass was just starting to grow at the toe, but you can see that the wall was built with very large boulders at the base and infilled with smaller stones and gravel on the upper portions of the wall. And then I'm going to slide over. This was a historic photo provided to me, which illustrates the poly barrier that was installed around the septic system up gradient of the wall. This is a portion of the wall that you hear stones at the upper portion of the wall. And you can see some of the filter fabric in the back that was installed with the wall as well. So this wall was installed in lieu of the block retaining wall. And so some of the questions that the commission asked me to look at was, is there any concern? I can show you a different view as well too. So this is the wall. The leaching field is on the top grade along here. To see whether or not the wall would be in compliance to support not only the lawn area, but the leaching field. So this, what you're seeing now too, I just pulled the photos off, what was partial of the design plan, which shows a wall and the septic system. Looks like it might have been modified slightly here because you can see the leader showing that there was supposed to be a block wall here. So we reviewed that, the as-built. Also, a letter was provided to the town from structural engineer who also reviewed the retaining wall for structural stability. So with respect to the wall, I believe the wall will be quite stable. The one recommendation I had, which I'm trying to see if I had a photo pulled up. This one's probably the best. You can see that there are a few gaps in the wall here on the back side in between some of all the various stones, which I would recommend infilling with 3/4 inch stone similar to what they already have on site here. Just to make avoid any more potential erosion. I don't think there will be, but it's just helpful to have that infilled in between all those gaps on the wall. The septic system was designed, as I showed, with a poly barrier around the down gradient side, and that is for protection for any potential breakout for the system. It's required in the septic design. So with that photo shown, I am making sort of an educated assumption that that was fully installed as shown in the photo.
What do you mean by educated assumption? Is that
Well,
because you didn't inspect
Because
it?
I was not out on site when it was installed or physically inspecting it. I'm just looking at the photo, which it looks to be a photo of the installation of that barrier.
Understood.
So
Now,
with that,
it's my understanding, I don't know if yours is the same, my understanding was backfilled in September of 23. And I think the approval of the septic sign for the Board of Health was done in January of 24. Would you say it's unusual to approve a design or an installation rather when the person doesn't observe it?
we wouldn't typically observe, typical inspections would be bottom of the hole, which way you want to see the bottom base of this material in which you're installing the septic system. And then you'd want to see, you'd go out one day to inspect the chambers installation. So we're not out, we wouldn't be out there unless requested for the full installation. We'd only see maybe the initial installation of the chambers and say, yep, you're installing them correctly, finish up. And then we'd have our survey crew out there picking up the inverts of the chambers and all of the D-box, tank, et cetera, so that we could complete the as-built. We would defer again to photos from the site contractor, or we'd go out one day just to see that they're installing the poly barrier, but we would not watch the whole installation process.
Understood. Let me ask you a question, because the
Sure.
Conservation Commission has been out there several times, and I know that the elevation changes when you're on the low side, away from the house, closest to the wetlands. But I would say that certainly the wall is, I don't know, 10 feet in places. Certainly, I know it's way over my head when I'm standing there, and I was standing there several times. As I understand it, the as-built shows a 4-foot retaining wall from elevation 82 to elevation 78. Is that accurate or is that not accurate?
What I'm showing you now is the as-built, septic as-built plan, and I can zoom in here a little bit and show you exactly what you're referencing, which is oops, it's not, just a little bit more. So this contour 82 shows that that's the high contour on the upper side lawn of the boulder wall. And then you have this 78 indicates that this would be a 78 along this contour here. So yeah, it's saying it's somewhere around a 4-foot wall, maybe a 5-foot wall in this section here. I would agree that I think that the wall is taller than that. So I'm not 100% sure that these contours are what we're fully seeing out here, and there might have been some more minor grading that they hadn't seen. But the goal here is to make sure that the septic system was designed, which they're giving all of the information over here for inverts, et cetera. And with the poly barrier installed, with the retaining wall, and it's indicating that the poly barrier goes down to elevation 72, which would be well below that grade back here.
But where is the poly, if you can use that wall as your reference point, where is the poly barrier?
I think this is showing it up against the wall, but it's probably about from the photo. It looks like it's maybe 3 or 4 feet away from the wall. That I may have lost that photo. Let me see if I can find that back again. Here we go. So you can see you've got maybe 3 feet off from the backside of the wall. So that looks to be where it's installed.
All right.
So it would be in here.
Now, here's my question to you. When we were out there, and I know I took some photos of this, I did see some erosion and sedimentation coming through the gaps in the boulder wall. And I was concerned because some of it I acknowledge could come over the top, but some of the sedimentation that I saw was actually inside the drop line from the top of the boulders. So it appeared to be fines appeared to be coming from the other side of the wall. So my concern is that, particularly given the inaccuracy in the as-built of showing a 4-foot wall, is there a way to get? Now let me back up. When we were out there during a rainy day, we saw a lot of erosion at the top. And going way back to when this started, last spring sometime, we asked them, can you put in a silt fence or some kind of a mechanism at the top of the wall? So they did do that, and they dropped it, I think about 3 feet from elevation from the top grass there. But what I'm concerned with is there a way to get that kind of silt fence going all the way down to the toe of the slope next to the wall? And I recognize that it's the big ask if you have to excavate the whole thing. But in thinking about it and talking about it, I know that Milton Academy had an issue with O'Hare Pond years and years ago, and they used a ditch witch to drop essentially a plastic barrier down about 8 feet that stopped the migration of I think it was like number 6. It was very heavy fuel that was migrating, but they dropped that in down to about 8 feet and provided protection for O'Hare Pond. So my question to you is whether or not, if they used a ditch witch, that you wouldn't have to excavate a whole lot, could you drop some kind of, not a poly barrier, because I know it has to be, you have to get some fluid through it, but could you drop like a filter fabric on the inside of the wall? That is the other side of what we're looking at here.
Sure. Let me see, do I have a? I mean, you can. What I look at when I see this photo here is, like, I think you do see a little bit of washout, and I would suspect that's a little bit of whatever material was in between the stones when they were installed. And I think that was more so what I was looking at. If you infilled those with 3/4 inch stone, you'd have that ability to allow water to flow through, but minimize the amount of sediment, if any. If I don't see why you couldn't do exactly what you're describing if you felt that was necessary on the inside of the wall to extend the filter fabric, which they installed on the upper portion, which is where I would envision, since it's smaller stones, that that filter fabric probably is helping. Looking at the larger stones to the base of the wall, I think any erosion coming between that is limited. You can see, like, again, a little bit of material, soil here is maybe what was seen. Let me see.
No, what we saw and what I was referring to is definitely at the grade level.
At the base down here.
At the very base, at the very toe of the wall.
Yeah.
It was right,
So,
it was underneath the extension of the rock. So let me ask another question, because I
Yeah.
think you did answer the question that I had, is it, and again, I'm concerned with the fines coming through these rather large holes. And
Right.
if you fill them with 3/4 inch stone, it's not going to stop all of the sedimentation and erosion. What would happen if you just pumped in concrete into the larger holes? Maybe not all of them, but the larger ones.
I mean, again, you could do that, and I would recommend, like you mentioned, not all of them, because you need to have relief on the wall. So if you strategically, picked some of the more open areas that you wanted to limit, you could infill that with concrete to minimize sediment. As long as we allowed avenues for a hydraulic release of any water behind hydrostatic release from water buildup behind the wall. We want to make sure that flows out and allows for that freeze thaw that we normally have in the winter season. So you could, if you felt that would
Well, what would be the best
Yeah.
mechanism for stopping the sedimentation coming through the obvious holes that are there now?
Yeah. I
We've
mean,
got
to be
3/4 stone, we've got concrete, keeping in mind that you still have to have weep holes, so you can't
right.
fill them all.
You can't fill
Right.
them all.
Or to drop
I-
a screen, a plastic
Yeah.
screen.
I think I would, to limit the disturbance to your septic system, I would prefer to infill with some concrete in that in specific areas, and then use 3/4 inch stone for the remaining gaps to allow flow through that, rather than doing excavation up on the lawn area near the leach field.
All right, questions from commissioners? And this is, we're just talking about the wall. We haven't even gotten to the drainage system, the roof drains and the driveway drain in the back. That's the second issue.
John,
if I could make a remark about the wall, I appreciate your idea of a ditch witch on the upslope side to create a gap where you could put in a fabric, but it just occurs to me that the wall on the downslope side is not vertical. It's probably not vertical on the upslope side either. So you might have to work back along the slope of the wall to get your fabric in. But I think I hear Deb saying that she doesn't think excavation is the way to go.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Tom, too, is that, I would hate to have you keep moving inward and then all of a sudden interfere with the leaching field and potentially either damage the poly barrier that is required to be around the leaching field, just to put in a filter fabric.
would that liner also preclude you from like pinning back the rocks or pinning back the boulders at all to get more stability out of the larger boulders?
Well, I don't think you need to get any more stability from those large boulders. I think they're quite secure there, and I believe you do have documentation from a structural engineer stating the same. But yes, that filter fabric would be in conflict with any type of pinning that you could do for that wall.
And one other question, I mean, at the top of the slope, was there any evidence of rilling or a material washing down in between, or anything that looked like something like a sinkhole or anything starting like that at the top?
No, that lawn looked really nice actually when we were out there last week. And it had come in quite well as the side slope. There's an access path it runs right along here just off property down to the detention basin, which is located right here. That's where we saw back in June, the surface here was not quite stabilized, and because of some washout from the cul-de-sac, you saw rilling in this area. I did not see any rilling along the wall or any erosion on the down gradient side that would indicate that there was any washout near the retaining wall. And then last week when we were there, they had redone and maintained the rain garden. The lawn here, even though it's not nice, clean lawn, vegetation is growing here, and look like now that it doesn't get the runoff from the rain garden, it's been growing in quite well. It was mowed. So I don't see any indication of erosion or settling on the lawn near the septic system.
John, if I could, I think the last time the commission was out was before the lawn was installed. And I think that when I've been out, the lawn is really stabilized. What's been happening, I haven't seen any evidence of erosion in the last two visits. When I've been out there, I would request that the commission authorize the homeowner to install the 3/4 inch stone as Deb is recommending, and then come back in 2 to 3 months to see whether there's any further issue of erosion showing up. I think that
understood, Ned, but you got to wait for the commissioners to weigh in on this, please. Arthur Doyle.
This goes back a long time to when I worked on seawall and jetty construction during my college years. There were jetties that didn't use cement. There were some that did use it. And I shouldn't say cement, I should say concrete. And I think we'd have to take a look and see what type of concrete was used. And this wouldn't, if concrete is used, be a patch type of situation. It would seem that this concrete would have to be pressure forced into those gaps.
That's the assumption, Arthur, I believe. Right, Deb?
Yeah, it would have to be injected into you'd have to force it into the gap, because if you patched it, it would just pop off.
Patch won't work at all. And it has to be a type of concrete that would be very suitable to the type of pressure that would be exerted behind this wall over time. Not 3 months, not 6 months, not 3 years. We're talking about 30 years. Some of the damages don't show up until that period of time, maybe even in a span of 25 to 50 years. So it has to be done right at the get-go.
All right, is that it, Arthur?
That's
Do
it
you have
for
other
me.
comments?
Yes, I'm done.
All right. What about Wendy, Ingrid?
No comments or questions.
Ingrid, anything?
No, nothing here.
Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ned, but I just want to get through the commissioners first.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Understood.
this is we can take this to conclusion, or we can table this and get to the other issue, which is groundwater that we all saw percolating up on top of the lawn, and it actually created, when we happened to be there during a rainstorm. It was pretty significant, actually. And there was like a channel going through the backyard next to the wetlands off property. It was pretty significant. So it was clear to me, and again, this is not an expert's view, but it's just, I'm looking at the water going across the lawn, and it appeared to be bubbling up from below. There was a lot of water, and the capacity of the chamber below was not sufficient to increase the water. And we did see that there was an addition. Again, this is not in the original approved plan, but we understand there was a driveway drain that was added to the Cultec chamber that originally was designed only to take the roof drain. So Deb, am I correct that it's too small to handle all that water?
I would anticipate that if that would be correct, yes. My understanding, sort of trying to get back to what it was designed for, and the intention was to capture the roof runoff. And usually roof dry wells are not sized for a full 100-year storm. So if you have like a quick hot flash flood or a high intensity storm, it may not handle it all. So the system should have a controlled outlet. So they may not be, I should clarify this. I would not say that the system is too small to design for the intent that it was proposed. It's too small to control the flow that's going into it, most likely for larger storm events without a controlled outlet structure or outlet overflow point. So, we had talked about, and so this is the lawn area in which it is. I'm looking from the far side of the house towards where the retaining wall is in the background here. So this is the lawn area. I apologize. I didn't have this is from June. And I think when we walked back here, you could kind of see some subtle depressions where it looked like it had bubbled up into the ground as described. And then when we went back last week, they had added an inspection port to the system, which my understanding is now, and what we talked about on site, was putting in sort of a pop-up outlet. So if the system does surcharge, instead of being forced up out of the ground, it would this outlet would pop up and allow water to surface flow gently across the yard. This was put in so that they could watch the system to see whether or not it was actually surcharged. There was indication that, or a thought maybe, that some of that was from a damaged irrigation line, but not knowing where the water came from, we were trying to be able to sort of watch what the system does. I think regardless of whether or not the irrigation line was the cause of the surface flow, in the past, an outlet control structure, I would recommend installing some type of outlet control structure for the system so that you control the way the water flows out of the system. So we took a peek in the inspection port when we were there. The bottom of the system was clean sand and it was bone dry. So which indicates to me that it does drain and infiltrate. It's not clogged, because that was one of my thoughts as well. What if the system got clogged with some sediment and is not draining well? So that does not seem to be the case. So I would recommend an outlet control structure of some sort, either this pop-up grate with a controlled flow path, or an actually open grate outlet here to allow the system a little bit of relief in the larger storm events.
Well, Deb, you said at one point that if the pop-up release valve would allow the water to get to the surface and gently flow across the grass. We were there, and it was no 100-year storm, but it was a pretty good downfall that lasted probably 25 minutes or so. But that was not a gentle flow. That was a lot of water, sheet flowing. And by the time it hit, you see where to the left, where you see the silt fence.
Yeah,
that was channelized there. That was, I think, Wendy, you and I were standing together watching that. That was a pretty significant channel of water going there. So my question is this, because the driveway drain was added to the original plan, that is the Cultec chamber for the original plan, should there be like a diversion of the driveway drain to a separate contact chamber with a controlled discharge or outlet.
Um, I mean, I honestly, I don't think that it's necessary in the sense that you are allowing for recharge through the subsurface chamber system. As long as this is this is again, just a picture that was provided, of the pop-up drain that they, installed over that inspection port that I was showing previously, just so you know, what's there. So that's exposed right now in the backyard. I feel that you could, oops, let's see. So this is the chamber system here in the location of the backyard. You could either, I don't believe you need another subsurface chamber system. They just tied it in because it was, you know, you had a closed drainage system surrounding the house that they could tie in and control that and not have another discharge point.
Yeah, but
I
that
think
was not part of our plan that was approved. That was an
That-
add-on.
correct, but that, I mean, the driveway still drains in that direction previous in the approved plan. So you would be, everything is draining towards the wetland.
Right, but we're now
Um,
putting it into a limited capacity or whatever the capacity is, X
Right.
capacity chamber. And when Steve
Mhm.
Ibis was out there the first day, he described it as a geyser. And I'm not exaggerating, saying it was, 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
But he said it was actually bubbling up
Mhm.
above the ground. And what we saw was similar. I wouldn't call it a geyser, but it was definitely coming
Yeah.
up onto
Yeah.
the surface. And that's
Yeah.
the concern.
Right, and I guess the question I would want to see if we could resolve is what was indicated to us at last week's site visit was that the contractor thought that that may have been coming from a damaged irrigation line adjacent, almost right where my cursor is here, to those systems. And that was the cause of that bubbling up. I don't know that because I wasn't at that site visit either. So that's sort of where the discussion with the pop-up was, is to see, well, let's put this in to see if we actually get that at the next rainstorm event. And see if we do get surcharge out of the chamber system. And
Well,
then
the only problem with a cut irrigation system is that when we were there,
it was raining.
we saw the water come as a result of the rain because it wasn't doing that beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And once
Okay.
the rains came for that 20-minute cycle or so, it was just sheet flowing across. It was pretty significant sheet flow. So
Yep.
if there was an irrigation line, there would have been some moisture there in the first place. And this definitely came. Other people that were there. I mean, Tom,
Mhm.
Wendy, you were there. Arthur, you were there, and we all looked at it.
Okay.
And that seemed to be a rain event. And it was, I don't know where it was heavy, but it didn't last long.
Sure. Right. Sort of like a little, well, that's again, that's your high intensity short storm event. So you need relief out of that. You could either, I mean, I think the simplest thing would be is you want to have the recharge, so you want the flow to go through the chamber system, but you want to have an overflow or relief for that system. The more I think about it, I do kind of like either a pop-up or an open grate at the top of, at grade, at the lawn grade, so that it can be a controlled bubble up out of the system. And the reason for that is you're maximizing the amount of recharge that you're getting from the system rather than if you put in a pipe at the end of the chamber, it's going to be lower in the system and allowing flow out. So you're not maximizing the chamber system itself for recharge.
But what about a pipe with some kind of a level spreader or
Yep,
riprap as you go
you
towards the
could,
backyard?
yeah, you can definitely put in like a stone swale so that you control where the water goes, and put in a stone level spreader so that it evenly flows out and is distributed. Surface flow, definitely.
Okay, Wendy, you and I were commenting on the channelization that we saw near the stone wall. I
Mhm.
mean, do you have any thoughts on whether or not a level spreader, like a pipe that at some level of invert that would take the water, if it was going to go over the top, rather than putting it up onto the lawn to do what we saw it do, rather it would take it and discharge it on some riprap or a level spreader closer to the back of the property line, closer to the wetlands? I can't see you, Wendy, but I know you and I were standing
I-
together when we were looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John, I mean, I don't claim to be an engineer or even be able to understand everything that is being discussed here tonight. But I can tell you that if I was that homeowner and I saw what I saw, I would have been very concerned. And I can say, as a conservation commissioner, I was also very concerned for the wetland that was in the path of that stream of water that we saw. And I do acknowledge that it was a very intense, rather brief storm. But that is what I think we can be expecting lots more of. And I think that we need to be designing our engineered solutions to accommodate that. And from what I saw, it sure didn't look like it was accommodating it.
All right, any other thoughts, questions from commissioners? Arthur's
I have a couple.
Go ahead, Tom.
Could we go back to the plan view showing the site? We were just looking at it.
Yeah. Oops.
We heard that the driveway runoff was connected to this Cultec somehow. Did that get said?
Yes, I said.
Yeah. Yeah, so
what is the route that flow would take? It goes to a foundation drain or something?
so there's I think the house's configuration is slightly different than what was originally proposed, but the driveway comes down and the garage face is right here. So they put a French drain in front of the garage door, which is tied into the roof leader system that runs around the foundation and comes back out and ties in here. The catch basin, we were told, ties into the roof leader system that comes to the building here and wraps around this side and ties into the chamber system.
I got it. And before, they didn't have that, right? They didn't have that drain
Yes.
that ties in. Yeah,
That's correct. So before the driveway came down here and ran through a swale and ends up
I see.
down
yeah.
into the wetland.
Well, it just occurs to me that they sized the Cultec to take the roof runoff, but then they've approximately doubled the impervious surface that's directed to it by adding the driveway. So the Cultec now is smaller in relation to the water input it's getting. And it just occurred to me, is the Cultec too small now? Or should another Cultec be added? Would that make sense? It just seems to me that when you double the impervious that is going to that chamber, you're going to change its behavior. And maybe that's what we saw.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Tom, that if you were doing this originally and you wanted to tie the driveway in, you would look at probably upsizing that chamber system. But just the intent of the chamber system is to provide recharge of impervious surface. So it's the volume is there just to recharge that certain volume. by tying in the driveway, surface runoff, you are increasing the volume that goes into that chamber systems, and therefore, the reason why I'm saying that you really need to have that overflow outlet, because it was approved with the driveway sheet flow off and into the wetland. So you're not really changing that practice or design. We're just redirecting it into the chamber system, overflowing it. And what I think I'm hearing is making sure that that overflow has the same characteristic of what was approved as the discharge point, which would be more of a level spreader, which I think when we were out there, we were looking along the silt fence line, and you could put a level spreader along that silt fence so you're not encroaching any farther and still have that ability within your limit of work.
I would just mention that when we did see that stream that appeared after the downpour, it was controlled by the silt fence.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to me. It ran along the upslope side of the silt fence, about partway. Yeah, and then went through it and went along it on the other side. So I think the behavior of the water would be different if there was no fence there, as indeed there will be none later on. But I was somewhat impressed that the water coming out of the silt fence was remarkably clear. It still has the ability to make trouble, but it wasn't carrying a lot of material, at least as far as I could tell.
Okay. Arthur, your hand up? You're on mute, Arthur.
Thank you, John. One of the observations I wanted to make is the fact that we're dealing with the here and now, and Wendy introduced a very important point. That's the basis for my putting in my hand. We know what the stormwater increases have been over the past 5-10 years. There are forecasts for what they're going to be over the next 5-10 or more years. It seems that what we should be doing is looking at what is needed for the out years, not what is needed for now.
Therefore, what, another chamber, redirect the driveway runoff into a second chamber and have a controlled discharge?
Well, yes, whatever the solution would be for the problem that Wendy and I identify. Stormwater is an increasingly important issue. And this looks like an environment that the remediation that's being discussed isn't going to be able to handle with the increased stormwater over the next 5-10 year intermittent period.
All right. Hans?
I'm a little confused by something that Deb mentioned about the report that was added to look inside the Caltech. Said it was bone dry in there, and there were, but you were seeing the flush of water on top. Is that so? Was that confirmed, whether there is an issue with the irrigation system? I mean, that's something you can turn off at a valve to stop the water coming out. And then also, is that evidence of maybe a potential problem further up the line where the drain isn't working correctly, and it's I'm confused as to, we're talking about, without the actual engineering calculations, that saying the Caltech's getting overwhelmed by the initial first flush, but you look down on the port and it's bone dry. So is there any help you can provide on that?
Sure. So the system should drain within 72 hours. My understanding is when they installed this, they overdug it like a septic system and put in perk sand all the way around the system. So I would suspect that system drains a lot faster than within 72 hours. It's also a smaller volume. And when we looked at that, I don't believe there was any rain the previous day, so I wasn't anticipating seeing any water in there. Again, it looked like the ground was dry in this area. And the contractor had the one area where the irrigation line was accidentally cut, that the irrigation company was coming in to fix that day. So, I don't know when that happened. I guess I was just, trying to relay as much information as possible as, whether or not that might have an impact on this. But basically what happens is the system does recharge. It's just when you have a flash flood and you dump too much water too fast into the system to allow it to infiltrate, the water can't stay stored in that confined chamber and needs relief somewhere. And that's either what we're seeing, it either potentially bubbling up through the ground, or if we provide a controlled outlet, it would flow out. Anything when that chamber system is maxed out from a storage standpoint, you're still getting groundwater infiltration in the chamber. It's just want to allow for, after that storage is maxed out, for that surface flow to have a controlled outlet so that we don't cause erosion or see the bubbling up through the lawn and any potential erosion that may cause.
So this, just to be clear, this specific picture is not the same thing that and I wasn't at that site visit, but
yes.
you
So
believe
this
it's
is
not
just
the same issue as was what was witnessed right after the initial rainstorm.
This was there. Well, I asked for mentioned maybe putting an inspection port on the system because there was no way to go in and see like if the system was clogged, did it need to be replaced, trying to kind of X off any kind of the problems that might be causing the issue that we're seeing or the conditions that we're seeing. So the contractor installed an inspection port, and you can unscrew this and kind of flash a flashlight in and look into the chamber. And so if we had seen water in there when we were there last week, I would have said, I think your system might be clogged, because if it's still sitting in water, it's not draining properly. We didn't, it was dry, so that was good. So what they did was they took this sort of screw top cap off and they put this pop-up system. So when the water does get to the top of the chamber system, it pushes this cap open and allows the water to flow out of the system. So you'd see this on the top of the lawn, if that was something you wanted them to keep for the system.
But Deb, the only problem with that is Steve Ivers, months and months ago, was the first one to report what I referred to as a geyser. And I'm not trying to exaggerate on the height of the geyser, but he said it was definitely bubbling straight up. And I thought that I know you're talking about an inspection port, but there was some kind of a relief valve that was always there because we saw it. And then Steve saw it months before we did, or at least a month before we did. So is that a second inspection port, or something was there that allowed the water to go straight up that Steve Ivers reported to the commission?
Yeah, each chamber on the top of it has where you can attach this with a little PVC pipe so you can bring it up to grade. So my guess is the pressure inside the chamber forced the water to break through, and the 2 points in which you were seeing it weep out of the ground were the two weakest points in that system. Because there's no other outlet for those chambers. As shown in here, all of the roof leader systems are closed as they go underground, and you have most of them are either a half story or a full story above. So the pressure that you have on that system, you're not going to force the water back up into here. It ended up coming out through the lawn instead.
John, may I?
Yes.
that inspection port was installed just prior to the commission's last meeting a month ago.
This one, yeah.
Yep, that didn't exist previously when you all saw what was happening. There was no relief valve in the ground. Since then, the contractor installed the pop-up
Yeah.
and would propose to put in stone bedding around it and then a shallow stone pathway down and out so that there was adequate pressure relief. Steve Ivis was on that walk last week. I don't want to speak for him, but Deb, I think he concurred with you that was an appropriate solution in this case.
But Ned, I appreciate what you're saying, but there's absolutely no doubt in any commissioner's mind that Steve Ivis reported at least 2 months ago, probably 2.5 months ago, that he saw, guys, it was his word. It was coming from something.
John, I don't doubt it. There was so much pressure in the water, it was probably bursting out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
What I think the solution is intended to do is to eliminate the ability for it to burst out of the ground because it'll have a place to go.
On the ground. And that's what we saw that Wendy was talking about and Tom Palmer was talking about when we saw it channelized right along the silt fence.
Right, it goes
And
downhill.
it was really flowing. So what I'm talking about is trying to get that excess water, whether or not you have an additional Caltech chamber or not. I think it needs an exit discharge controlled outlet that goes somewhere other than up, and get it to a riprap or some kind of a level spreader so that it doesn't do what we saw it do. When it was coming up, with the water we saw was going right across the grass, and it was a lot of water.
John,
So
I think either one of those solutions is appropriate. And we discussed both in the field. I think the notion came out of the conversation that we would try the pop-up. But if the preference of the commission is to install a horizontal pipe that would feed to a level spreader, that's something that can easily be done as well. I don't want to debate what's the right solution. I think either one is, it sounds like either one is appropriate, and I would leave it to the commission to make a determination which it favors.
All right, so the only open question for me is whether or not an additional, and Ned, I think you know this, and the homeowner, I don't see him because I can't see the full screen here, but a second Caltech chamber is not a big expense item. But if it makes sense to do that, to spread out the volume of water, then I think it would make a good idea, and it's not cost prohibitive. It's just a plastic chamber that you put on the ground.
John, I'm listening to your expert and Steve Ivis's concurrence with her opinion that what's being proposed is appropriate.
Got it. Okay. So I'm not sure we're in a position to vote on this because we probably need to see the plans. But my thought would be, because of the points raised by Arthur and Wendy about the future, the change in our climate, and the increased water that we're all confronting now, we need to be planning for the future with a heavier rainfall. And to do that, I would suggest on the wall that we use not just the 3/4-inch stone to fill the gaps. And Tom, I bought what you said that you can't use a ditch witch if the interior of the wall is not vertical. I understand that. You'd have to move the ditch witch away from the wall to do that. But what I do suggest is that in order to prevent the erosion that we all saw going through the holes, that we should plug the larger holes with pressurized concrete and the smaller holes with the 3/4-inch stone. And I don't think that's inconsistent with anything that Deb has told us tonight. I know there are alternatives, but I think we ought to be planning for the future. And I think that those large holes, those are big holes. And we all saw the erosion coming through. They weren't always the giant holes. But I think we have to take the extra step to make sure that we prevent erosion coming through those large holes. That would be, but I'm not yet making a motion. That's to tell you what the leaning is. And maybe what we should do is just sort of give a concept and ask for a proposed plan that does, what we end up with as a consensus. And with respect to the roof leaders and the driveway leaders, I suggest that we get a plan for that as well. And I understand it seems to be kind of up in the air as to whether or not a second chamber is needed. I think it is, but I think at a bare minimum, we need to have a horizontal discharge going to a level spreader or a riprap of some kind, because what we saw in terms of the sheet flow was a disaster. So I'm looking for whether or not there's a consensus in those two areas. And I know I haven't stated a consensus. I've given you options. Thoughts, Hans?
So, I mean, the amount of water that's being added, I mean, that's something that can be calculated, and can we get some, confirmation on the sizing and associated with that plan, just to treat this as if it were
You had your son evaluated
a
for confidence.
legitimate proposed change, and what we would typically ask for is confirmation of the
Calculations.
yeah.
Hans, you're sounding rational again. Makes good sense.
Sorry, I must be tired.
Tom,
My
Arthur,
dad.
Ingrid, Wendy?
Arthur here. John, if I may, just to bring us back, our primary responsibility is to protect the wetlands behind this property. And I think that we have to do what has to be done in order to do so. Because to try and remediate wetland that's damaged inadvertently, however, it is very difficult, very expensive. And the more we can get ahead of this up front, the better off I think we're going to be.
So therefore, do we invite a plan from the homeowner, through counsel and experts, not Deb, because she's our consultant, but rather a plan to what's the best way. And again, I'm erring on the side of caution and long-term care. So I would favor a plan to pressurize concrete into the larger holes and the 3/4 inch stone into the smaller stones to make sure that we don't get the erosion that we've already seen. And then on the Caltech roof drain leaders and driveway drain, get some calculations and look what the calculations are for the driveway runoff. And Ned, you were correct when you said that, look, it was part of the plan that even though it wasn't into the Caltech chamber, it was still referenced because it's a downward sloping driveway, and I get it. But I'd like to see the calculations as Hans suggested, and that might give some level of confidence that either one chamber is appropriate or two chambers. But in either event, I'd like to see a plan for a level spreader to get it sort of on a horizontal discharge and to protect the wetlands so that it doesn't channelize, which we saw from the sheet flow. Does that sound like an approach that everybody would support, that we're asking for their plan, but with those components? Concrete pressurized for the larger holes, 3/4 inch crushed stone for the smaller holes. And that'll be, which one is large and which one is small is going to be part of your plan. And then the other one, the calculations for the runoff from the driveway, and then to see what those calculations suggest about whether or not the Caltech chamber that exists is sufficient capacity or if they need a second one. And then in addition, whether or not there should be to propose a horizontal discharge, controlled discharge, level spreader or riprap. That sound like a plan?
I concur, along with having projections for increased rainwater or stormwater runoff.
On the calculations that Hans had suggested.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So is there a consensus for that? I'm not sure we need a vote on this because it's we're still in the stage of trying to figure out what's best. But is that Ned, is that clear? Is it clear enough for you to come up with a plan for those two areas?
It's clear enough. I'll obviously need to confer with my client. but I think I understand what you're asking for. I would ask that the matter be continued till November so that we at least have sufficient amount of time to put that plan together. And respond.
That's okay with me. Anybody else have any concerns with the extra month? I do not. I don't hear any. All right. I don't think it requires a vote, but if we continue, then
one
with the
other-
expectation
one other-
they'll give us a plan. Yes.
One other matter I just wanted to raise, when we were out there the other day, we did a quick inspection of the rain garden in the cul-de-sac itself. And they top dressed it, I don't know if that's the right word, with wood chip mulch. And those wood chip mulch were floating up and clogging that drain in the middle. I would recommend that the commission take a look at that and suggest that they remove that wood mulch and replace it with stone, because it's going to be a real nightmare for ongoing maintenance.
I totally agree with Ned, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, I do as well. And for your benefit, and I know, Wendy, you were very concerned with the pooling of the water when we were out there on the Dr. Strom side of the detention basin. It was pooling there. So I actually called Todd, who acknowledges, he said, look, I'm going to put a top coat in as soon as the last house is built. And I asked him, can you do it in such a way that you avoid that ponding, so that it's either directed, down into the appropriate catch basin or back into like if you put a mound in the center of the roadway, you could send that water that we saw ponding back into the detention basin. And I think it would be helped dramatically if you get the wood chips out of there and you use the stone. So he said, yes, yeah, that's easy.
So just so that everybody has it, this is what the rain garden looks like now. So I did take a quick picture so you can see the buildup of the mulch on the beehive grate. So it'd be nice to now that you've got some established vegetation in here, just fill this base with this same stone rather than the mulch.
Right. And Deb, can you go back one picture?
Sure.
There, right? Yes, I think that's it. So in the lower left side of the corner, that's where we saw ponding of water.
Yep.
There was a little bit of a berm so that the water was
Yeah.
not going back into the center of the detention bay. It was just sitting there, which would be a disaster.
If I
in the
have
winter.
a,
So
I
I
don't
think
have a picture.
the top coat can fix that
yeah,
right there.
yeah.
Yeah, they also need to do some other things, like put some protective fencing around it, so that children on bicycles don't go flying into the
Yeah,
pond,
Phew.
and that they keep vehicles from they force vehicles to make proper turns around the cul-de-sac without getting into the cul-de-sac and damaging the basin itself. Those are some things that I see. I don't represent the homeowners association, but those are a couple of issues that I think need to be addressed as they go forward to finalize their issues.
Yeah, that makes good sense, Ned. I mean, public safety is always an issue for us, and that sounds pretty reasonable and makes sense. All right,
Could I
anything else
just-
from butters? Yes, Deb?
Sorry, just for, the more information that we can have, the better. Ned, if you could have them just keep an eye on that pop-up drain while they're looking at the design, because that might help educate us as to, or help us with looking at that size of the chamber system.
Absolutely, because I do think that it'll be good evidence of what's happening today with that valve system installed.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we could spread some stone around it just to create some erosion control.
Okay, good. Well, unless there's something else from commissioners or butters or members of the public, we'll continue this with the assent of the homeowner until the November meeting.
Actually, John,
Yes, Ingrid?
this is Wendy.
Oh, Wendy.
I just have some concerns about the mulch issue again.
Yes.
I don't think that it's good for the plants to use gravel as a mulch. I'd like to do a little research on that, to find a better alternative. But any kind of floating hardwood mulch is a bad idea.
No, I
That's gonna be-
agree. And if you can just do the research, alert us and put Ned in the loop so that he knows what's coming. And I don't think that's going to be an issue because we all want to do the same thing, have
Yeah.
the system work, and sustain the plant life.
Right. Yeah. The system won't work if we kill off the plant. So
Correct. No, I agree. So I thank you for that. And it just keep us all in the loop, including Ned and Deb as well. Okay.
okay.
Will do.
Happy
Perfect.
to.
All right.
you, Wendy.
Thanks all. Now, we spent a long time on that, so I thank the public for its patience and the commissioners for their patience. So we're going to try to move pretty fast through the next ones. 10 Fletcher Steele Way. We actually did a visit there, and the Conservation Commission did an inspection. Everything seemed to be in order. The only reason we didn't vote for this is because we lost our quorum, so we couldn't vote. But the 75% was, of survivability was clear. Actually, it was beautiful, I thought. And I think we're all impressed with the care and for the maintenance there. So we salute the homeowner, and I would suggest, and Arthur was there, and I can't, Wendy, you were there. Yep. And Tom, I forget when we lost the quorum, but we lost it at some point. But Wendy, do you want to, weigh in on your impressions of whether or not we should issue the certificate of compliance?
I'd rather not take the lead on that, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that this certificate of compliance be issued for 10 Fletcher Steele Way.
All right, good. Tom, you saw it as well, right?
I didn't, but I would second it anyways, simply because I trust Arthur's judgment.
All right, well, that's perfect. And I was quite impressed with it, and I think Arthur was as well. So with that motion before us, any discussion? I'm going to do a roll call vote. Not all in favor, but Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Tom Palmer, how do you vote?
Yes?
Wendy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
I'll abstain. I didn't see it, so I can't.
Okay, all right. And I'll vote, John Kiernan votes in favor of it as well. So certificate of compliance has been granted. And we can now move on to the next, which is, I didn't mean to blow right by the homeowner. He or she might be present with us. If that person wants to say anything. If they're there or not, I'll repeat my compliment. It's very beautiful. Number 3 on the list is 370 Hillside Street. This also is a certificate of compliance. The Conservation Commission was there present on site. We inspected it. We actually spent a good deal of time there, and things seem to be in order. We spent some additional time there because there was a portion of a new fence that seemed to come awfully close to the 25-foot non-disturbance zone. But when we looked more closely, it seems like everything was in accordance with our rules and regulations. I'm comfortable issuing the certificate of compliance, but others were present there. Arthur, you were there?
Yes. I concur.
Any comments?
No, I think everything was in good order.
All right. Anybody else? I can't remember who was still. I know we lost the quorum. Can't remember who was not there. Are there any abutters or members of the public that have a comment, question? Hearing none, Arthur, do you move to issue the certificate of compliance for 370 Hillside Street?
I do.
All right, I was there, so I'll second it. Any discussion? Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm just looking across the screen. John Kiernan, I vote yes. Wendy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer?
Yes.
Arthur Doyle?
Yes.
Wendy? I'm sorry, Ingrid?
Abstain, same reason.
Okay, same vote, but the certificate of compliance will issue. Thank you very much. Next is 8 Wentworth Farm Road. This is an amendment to the order conditions. And this is an area that on our many site visits to 24 Wentworth Farm Road, we always stopped at this location because there was some water, some siltation next to what will be the driveway area. And we actually asked for some additional erosion protection at the next door neighbor's house as well. Jeff Kane, do you have this one?
Yes,
Can
Jeff.
you help us out with what's going on?
Yeah, sure. And I think this just segues back to your first meeting, for your first discussion as far as the house is down further on the cul-de-sac. The owner of lot 10, has wind of some issues with water down further down the street and with some issues with the builder and the developer. And just wants to keep out of the mix, wants to make sure he's not contributing anything that might potentially add to the situation. So the initial foundation drain for the house discharged on the west side next to that driveway there. And it was always put there. There was really no rhyme or reason. It was just the closest discharge point that we could get to gravity. Kept it just a little more economical as far as making a longer run. But he would now like to run it the other direction. It's a longer run, so it's a little bit more money. Again, that's why we didn't do it initially. But the foundation drain does end up discharging to the same watershed, just in a different route. It is only a foundation drain, so it's a discharges on occasion when that groundwater does get that high. Since we do have we've done those test pits out there, have a good idea where the seasonal high water table is. It's something that's not going to discharge all the time, even every season. It's just on occasion it will. So it's not going to change the amount that's leaving. It's just going to change the direction it's going to. So we're hoping the commission will see this as a fairly innocuous change.
All right. Do you have a plan that you can share with us just to show us where the discharge will be?
Sure.
And is it, I should ask you, Jeff, is this groundwater or is it surface runoff?
Just groundwater. Just groundwater. Can you see that, this plan?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Okay. So let me see if I can go back to, this is the initial plan. And we had right here where this little triangle is.
Yes.
That's the foundation drain where we initially have it approved. So it just goes the perimeter of the house, just on occasions where that water might get high enough to get to the basement slab and discharged over here to this side, which you can see it's going to run down, might get into the wetland here, might with the grading get down onto the street. His concern was that was somehow going to get down to that cul-de-sac. I can't say that would ever happen or not, but that was his concern. So he just wanted to, let me go back to this. Now, perimeter comes around the house, the drain would come here, follow in front, and discharge by gravity a little further down the other direction. This is right beyond here is the bridge for the river. This area has all been disturbed, and as far as the bridge work goes, so it was put back as loam and seed, and it would be put back as loam and seed again, except it'll have the little stone outlet for that drain here. Only a 4-inch drain, like I said, like every other foundational drain we've had in here. Just occasional groundwater, just something to keep the basement dry. That's all it is.
All right. When I'm looking at the install erosion control barrier there, is that temporary or is that permanent?
Right here?
Yes.
That's just to keep it before it's stabilized. That's all.
All right. And after it's stabilized, is there any riprap there or what's the water dropping on?
We have we have a little stone, there's a little detail, it's just a little stone on the end of the 4-inch pipe, just to stop anything from kind of eroding at the opening.
All right. Makes sense to me because the area that we were concerned with is, way back where I think it's the property line dividing this lot from the next one to the left.
Yeah.
And there's a drain somewhere, a catch basin right around. And I did see some, and I don't know which side of the property line it was coming from, but there was water certainly heading towards the street. And there was some sedimentation and sand on the street. So I think this is a good way to eliminate that problem. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like I said, we're hoping it's a fairly innocuous change. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what's going to which watershed or anything else. So just a circuitous route, get it in there.
All right. Questions from commissioners? All right, so what we're looking for is whether or not this is a minor revision. If it is, then we can have a second vote and adopt the revision. If it's a major vote, then that is a major change. They'd have to go back and file a new notice of intent. It appears to me to be a minor revision and one that benefits the lot, actually, and certainly the resource area that we protect. Any thoughts, comments from commissioners? Any abutters or members of the public? All right, is there a motion that first motion that we're going to do is whether or not this is a minor revision? And I'll move that it is a minor revision. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Tom. Any discussion? So how do you vote, Wendy?
I vote yes.
All right, Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Yes.
Right, good. And I, John Kiernan, vote yes as well. So
Thank you.
second vote now is whether or not to adopt this revision as outlined in the plan by Jeff Kane. And again, I'd make a motion to adopt this revision and make it a revised or amended order of conditions. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, thanks, Arthur. Any discussion? Hearing none. Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm just going across the top. John Kiernan, I vote yes as well. Wendy?
Yes.
Tom, how do you vote?
Yes.
Arthur Doyle?
Yes.
And Ingrid Beatty?
Yes.
All right, unanimous. Thank you very much. Jeff,
Thank
thank
you
you
all.
very much for your presentation tonight. Now we go next to number 5, which is 440 Harland Street. This is a certificate of compliance. Do we have a presenter for this? Hopefully.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? This is Peter with Collins Engineering Group.
Hi, Peter. Yes, we can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Awesome. Would you like me to try to share the plan or?
Yes, that would be helpful. Hans, can you give him access?
Are we all set?
All right, let me try this. Are you guys looking at the plan?
Yes, we are.
You need me
You
to
might have to
zoom in
make it a little bit bigger. It's a little bit hard to see.
All right, is this working on your end?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group. This was a septic repair on a failed 4-bedroom home. Just a quick overview of the site. We have wetlands to the north. Separating us from the work was an existing paved driveway. New septic went in an existing lawn area. Really no grade changes. To my knowledge, the area of the work, including the new septic tanks, pump chamber, and leaching field, have been stabilized. So yeah, we would be requesting a certificate of compliance on this tonight. Not sure if the commission had any questions or concerns on this one.
Do we have your attestation? I think I'm looking at it. No, that's the wrong one. Do we have your attestation that the project was completed in substantial compliance with the approved plans?
You should have received it, yes.
Yeah, I think we did. That's what I'm looking for. Yes, I've got it in my hand, dated August 19th, 2024. I have inspected the above site and found it to be in substantial compliance with the approved plans. This is signed by George Collins, PE. Were there any plantings that we have to wait for survival? I can't remember. I know that you were close to our jurisdiction.
I don't think we had anything proposed on this project.
I don't either. Does anybody else remember? I think it was clean, just dig it and backfill. And stay out of our jurisdiction for, overnight storage and refueling, which I trust was done. But I don't think there was any plantings on it.
I thought it was free of any planting obligations, John.
Good, all right. Any comments from commission members? Questions?
Does the Board of Health need to approve this also?
I believe this has been already approved. Yeah, I mean, they approved the design of it initially, and then they issue a certificate of compliance completion as well. I believe
thank you.
it has already been submitted and has been received.
Okay, any comments, other questions from commission members? Abutters or members of the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 440 Harland Street based upon the substantial compliance attestation by George Collins? Such
So
motion.
So moved.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Tom.
Arthur.
I'll
Tom, you
second,
want to
Tom.
second it? All right, thank you. So the motion's by Tom, the second's by Arthur. Any discussion?
Hey,
Hearing none.
how you doing?
Yes.
Yeah, wait, this is the owner of 440. Will the town come by to take down the sign or like the DPW sign?
That's a good question. I don't know. Philip, do you know?
I'll check with them tomorrow to have them take down.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, good.
problem.
And you know how to get a hold of Philip in the DPW office?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. Perfect. All right, no other discussion. Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
I, John Kiernan, vote yes as well. Wendy?
Yes.
Tom Palmer?
Yes.
Arthur Doyle?
Yes.
And Ingrid?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, unanimous. You're good to go. You've got a certificate of compliance. Thank you, Pete. Next
Okay.
one is 77 Neponset Valley Parkway. This one is a notice of intent.
See you, Dan.
And this one actually may require a site visit, but we'll see as we progress along. I know it's a pretty sensitive area, a nice area.
This one is me as well. I
Thanks, Pete.
this and the next one, so I will share it again and we'll jump right into it.
Perfect.
If someone could just confirm for me, we're looking at the plan and you can see everything well enough.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Again, for the record, Peter Lyons, PE with Collins Civil Engineering Group, representing the homeowner. This is a repair on a failed residential 3-bedroom system on the south side of Neponset Valley Parkway. Overview of the site basically reveals the site was historically cleared out of a wetland long ago. We do have wetlands around the entire property, starting at flag 1 and ending at flags 27. The 50-foot buffer falls right in the middle of the lot with, I don't believe anywhere on site existing more than 100 feet from the resources. So looking at this from the street, it's higher out back, slopes down to the front yard. We have a very high groundwater throughout the whole site, relatively poor soil conditions. So what we're doing is using the slope to our advantage. We will be able to keep this a gravity system by putting the tank out back and paralleling the surface topography down to a raised leaching field in the front yard. Looking at the general layout, you can see that we've kind of balanced it between we'll call it the eastern and western wetlands. So we are greater than 50 feet to both wetlands, to the leaching area, and just inside of 50 feet to the septic tank. Really no options for the tank location. Let's see, we got a dewatering pit out front as well as stockpile areas. Erosion control is shown basically around the entire project, including site access and decommissioning of the existing components. Stockpile area, yeah, is in the front yard. Yeah, I don't think we're taking down, it looks like one small landscape tree, maybe an 8 or 10-inch caliber tree, which is outside the 50-foot buffers. The rest is in existing lawn area. This is a pretty straightforward project. I would say no clearing involved. The northern resource is protected by the driveway, and then we'll have sedimentation control behind that. So I guess we'll take any questions from the commission at this time.
All right, you're right smack in the middle of wetlands. I think the commission should take a look at the lines. Who set the lines, Peter?
That's a good question. I believe Brooke Monroe did this.
All right, people look at their schedules. Today's the 10th. How about the 14th, this Saturday? and I have no favorite Saturday. I'm just looking for dates that are acceptable to everybody. This Saturday, Wendy, Tom, Arthur, Ingrid.
Could I make a remark about the plan?
Of course.
Could you show the soil diagrams that are in the lower right of the plan?
Yep.
I had a conversation today with the woman named here, Carolyn Kinsella, the Board of Health. I called her because I was curious about these soils. As you see, there's fill on top of peat, and you see those little triangles. Those mark the groundwater observed, and what Carolyn told me was they could not do a perk test because when they dug down and reached that peat, it was saturated. So there is no perk test on this site. And we also learned that she didn't witness any kind of excavation, contrary to what it says right under soil data. So to me, that was like a mistake that should not have been made, to say that she was there when she was not. At any rate, I talked about it with her as a sort of odd septic because it's being built in a wetland, or what was formerly a wetland. And you see that these borings were done in July, and they found the water table in one test pit was at 22 inches down, and the other was 36. Now, you know the definition of a wetland is an area where the soil is saturated within 12 inches for a significant part of the growing season. It occurred to me that if it's this close in July, it might be closer in March and April. In other words, as Mr. Lyon said, this is altogether a wet area, and the lot has wetlands on three sides. So I wonder, how dry is this area? With the conversation with Carolyn, she introduced me to Pete Brogna, who is a septic consultant for the town, and said he had reviewed the plan. And he said, he called me later, he said, well, the reason it works is that they're building a mound out front, and that mound will provide the 4 feet of dry absorbent soil that has to be between the bottom of the distribution lines and the water table. So even though the whole area may be wet, this hill will be dry, and so the system can do the job. So I just would like to add that in sum, he said, in his view, and he had told this to the Board of Health, this system will work if it is built the way it's described here. He said, that's not for sure, but he did say this was designed that his opinion was going to be adequate. So I just want to add that information. I will be curious when we get to the site and walk around the lawn to see if we think that lawn is a wetland or not. I just, I really don't get it. The fact that this whole lot is sloped and yet it's a wetland. Usually wetlands are in basins or low places, but here's a long gradual slope that just, I don't really understand why it's wet, and I want to know more about it. I guess that's what I have to say.
Very informative, Tom. Thank you. Well,
I can go Saturday.
You can?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's one yes. I'm a yes. Wendy, how are you?
I have no comments or questions. Thank you.
No. Are you available for Saturday for a site walk?
Oh, can I give you a tentative yes? I don't want the quorum to be contingent on me, but I'm hopeful to be there.
We'll take a tentative yes. All right. How about Tom said yes. Arthur, can you go?
Tentative yes as well.
All right. Ingrid?
I can't go the 14th or the 21st. I can go the 28th and the 5th.
28th is okay with me. Arthur, 28th?
Checking. That's a go. Yes.
Tom Palmer?
28th, you're asking?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Wendy, is that better?
I believe so, yes.
All right. It's good with me. Who do I not see? Hans, where are you?
I will not be able to make the 28th, but it sounds like you have a quorum.
Is there a Ingrid? I know you said you were not available earlier dates like the 14th or the 21st.
Yeah, I'm out of town both those days.
All right.
I won't be able to do the 21st either. I
Okay.
can do the 14th though.
All right. I'm trying to get as many people there as possible.
Yeah.
All right. So right now we've got our quorum. So let's make it the 28th. For Peter, is that okay with you? We'll meet you on site at 8:30 a.m. Saturday, 9/28.
Okay, 8:30. So this is going to be the first visit of the morning.
Yes,
Okay. I will be available to meet you guys there.
at 77 Neponset Valley.
Correct.
Perfect.
Is
All right.
park-
Good news.
Is
Yeah.
parking an issue?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Is parking an issue there?
it's a long driveway, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, we should be fine. It's a busy road, but it's a long driveway. And if you need to, it's all going to get disturbed anyway. So if you have to park on the grass, I don't think it's an issue.
Okay. All right, Peter. Thank you. We'll see you on September 28th.
All right, I got one more for you.
All right, and that would be 1072 Rush Hill Road.
Yes, it would.
Perfect. Tell us about that one.
I will. I'd love to. Again, if we can confirm we're looking at the plan.
Confirmed?
Awesome. So this is 1072 Brush Hill Road. The road itself is down a little bit of a paved driveway to the north. There it is. It's, about 200 feet setback from the street. It's an existing 5-bedroom home, detached garage. We have wetlands to the south, in and along the existing tree line. Our proposal for this one, years ago, we were out here doing a septic system. You'll see the new septic out in the front yard here. That's all stabilized, done, looks good. The scope board for this project is just an 18 by 24 foot addition off the back of the house. The proposal is to make a very limited work area within the 50-foot buffer. This dash line here is our proposed erosion control. It's really not much more than to allow some guys and small equipment like a very mini excavator to dig out the footings. Originally, we were going to access through the side. We decided we didn't want to go cutting down trees and stuff. So we really shrunk this up to try to give the client what they're looking for without having any detrimental effect to the resource. The erosion control is entirely in existing lawn area. We're not proposing any grade changes. Our erosion control is an 8-inch straw wattle. It's relatively flat on site, and we do have a natural grass buffer to help us with any sedimentation migration towards the wetlands. As mentioned, access will be solely between the two buildings. There will be no work or access to the project outside of the established limits. The proposed addition, as well as the erosion control lines, are staked out in the field. So that's what we got. Any questions, concerns from the commission?
Yes, I think you've got 432 square feet of additional impervious surface. And you're within, what, 34 feet of our 25-foot. I mean, we've got a 25-foot, so you're within 34 feet. So could you do the calculations for us for roof runoff? Because what I'm really looking for is, do you need some kind of a roof drain, Caltech chamber or something? Because you're awfully close to the wetlands. And I don't know what it's just a computer program. If you can give us the runoff from that 18 by 24, which I think is 432 square feet.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. And in this case, what we'd probably do is just do, a minimal subsurface Caltech, or, even a stone trench to hold, a nominal capacity, something reasonable, with probably an overflow discharge just into the lawn. But yeah, that's pretty common to do. So
Good. That would be helpful if you could have that for we got to do a site visit on this one too, also on the 28th of September.
okay, and we should definitely be able to make a minor revision to this. Does the commission have any preference as far as, I'm thinking if we could propose a couple Caltex, maybe 10 feet off the addition, 10 feet off the garage. We could put something in this area here.
Yes, as long as they're staying out of our 25-foot zone.
Yeah, we'd keep it within the established work limit and out of the 25-foot zone. Yes.
Isn't it also the case that the soil must be appropriate to infiltrate? Otherwise, it'll just be like a tight tank.
Yeah, for clay, that's true.
Right, that's true. I could pull it up if the commission wants it, but like I said, we did do a septic out here recently, and just looking at the size of the septic for a 5-bedroom home, it looks like, they were at least moderate, well draining soils. If this leaching field were huge, that would indicate poor soils on site. So we should have something to work with. And, as the engineer, it's our role too to determine if it makes sense to strip out a couple more feet to get into a more pervious layer. That will all be addressed, with a pretty simple design of this dry well or roof infiltration system.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good. So we'll be there at about, 9 to 9:15 or so.
Yep, so after Neponset.
Yes, we'll go directly there.
Okay.
All right, so we'll continue this one until the 28th. But I should ask, any comments from commissioners, abutters, members of the public?
Yeah, we have a few questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Does he by any chance know?
I'm sorry, could you identify yourself?
Oh, Remy Franklin, 1084 Brush Hill Road, with Carol Bowen at 1070.
1070, great. Welcome tonight.
We're both abutters.
Understood.
And we want to know, does he happen to know the purpose of the addition?
What the rooms are going to be? Is there going to be a kitchen in there? Is there going to be
is there an extra
bedrooms? Does the septic system provide for additional bedrooms?
To be honest, I am not sure exactly what the use is. You bring up a good point with the septic system.
Because the septic system is raised. It had to be raised 3 or 4 feet because there's so much wetland there that
that's correct. So the septic system is sized for a 5-bedroom home, which is what that house is currently considered. So whatever they're doing there, they're not changing this from a septic design perspective. They can't add anything that would be considered a bedroom without exchanging, existing room for something else. So the septic flow is not going to change from a design standpoint.
But how do you know? How do you know if you don't know what rooms are going? I mean, where would that be looked at then? In the building department or something? If you guys approve this, where would that get looked at?
Yeah, I mean, typically at this stage, this is in the planning stage. So the first thing we do is come, with a basic 18 by 24 foot box and see if the geometry works, see if the commission and the Board of Health are on board, pending that it's used, for the appropriate. Like I said, they cannot add a bedroom legally without, increasing the septic, which is not on, that's not the plan. So the building inspector, whoever issues a building permit, is going to make sure that the use is allowable of the proposed structure prior to issuing the permit. So yeah, I guess the building inspector would be more involved with that.
Yeah, and they would have to coordinate with the Board of Health, because if it were a bedroom, that would violate the Board of Health permit for the size of the septic or the capacity of the system.
Right. That's what we were wondering.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the buffer, it's all, I'm sorry, I'm kind of dumb about this, but it's all within the buffer. You're outside of the buffer zone. Is that right?
No, you're inside the buffer zone, but the buffer zone is divided. It's 100 feet from the wetland flags. So you can see that looks like wetland flag number 9 and number 8. And you can see this, it's 18 feet to the erosion control line, but it's 30, I think it's
34
feet to the see the red outline, the corner of the building, the proposed,
Right.
there, right there.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the
That's
building.
it. That
But-
has to be more than 25 feet away, and it looks like it's 34 feet. And our purpose in being there is to certify the location of that wetland flag 9. Because if we said, oh, no, that's, the wetland is actually closer to the house, then that would create a problem, because we've got a 25-foot non-disturbance zone. That's why we verify the lines, to make sure that the distances are accurate, reflected on the plan.
And they would be aware that they could in no way extend the lawn or anything, because that pretty much takes up their backyard. If my understanding is correct, nothing can go into the wetlands, grass, it has to stay natural.
Well, it depends on, what the existing conditions are. You're right, they couldn't go into like a 25-foot zone. They'd have to ask permission if they were going to do a manicured lawn where it previously was not one, if it's within our jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction is 100 feet from the wetland flags. So it probably will go right over the top of the house. But when you said it's going to take up most of their backyard, it's not the dotted red line, it's the solid red line that's the house.
No,
The
I know,
dotted red- what's
but,
that?
but that really, they have so little backyard there that my concern is also that they, after it's all finished, decides to extend their backyard another, and then they're in the wetlands.
No, you can't do that. I mean, we
Right.
would not allow that. You are
We
correct.
know that, and you know that.
Right. We want to make sure they know that. That's right.
That's my point.
That's a fair comment. All right, Pete, if you could make sure that
Because
the
the family
homeowner
isn't
knows
living.
that.
The family doesn't live there.
Oh, they don't.
No,
No.
Is it rented or is it for sale? or
yes,
what?
it's a rental.
Okay. All right.
That's
Well,
why we're also questioning why they're adding on to their property when it's only a rental. And the renters don't even use that part of the house from our understanding.
well, understood, and thank you for opening our eyes to that. But that's an important point. If they were trying to, just increase the rental value by adding a bedroom, that would be a problem. That is true.
I mean, that's what we don't understand why, if they're not living there and it's only a rental and it can't be a 2-family, why are they doing this?
I guess the other issue that when I looked at some of the plans, it said that there was no other place to build this addition, right? But their existing garage is very simple. It's really like old horse stables with no doors. It's not a it's really not a substantial structure. And I mean, I guess if it's really okay about the wetlands, then I guess this is okay. But if it's questionable about the wetlands, I don't know why they couldn't
Just do it
go toward the existing garage
in the footprint that already
in the
exists.
footprint that already exists. So it's just a question,
No, it's a fair question. But what we try to do is honor a homeowner's or a property owner's the ability to do with their property as they see fit, as long as they're in compliance with the wetlands regulations. See, and you've identified two significant regulations. One would be the Board of Health and the capacity of the septic system, more than the 5 bedrooms. And the other one would be, can they extend the lawn into the wetlands? And the answer is no, they cannot. And they cannot extend it into the 25-foot non-disturbance zone either.
Exactly. So okay, so we can be there on the 28th, right?
Yes, that's my working presumption. Pete, can you make sure that's okay? I'm a homeowner. It's happened in the last, 33 years on this.
Well, we were
It
there
happened
for
a
the
handful of times when property owners said, no, you can't come on. It's pretty unusual.
Well, we were there for the septic.
Yeah, do you have like a private sewer line that goes very close to your house?
Yes.
No,
And
I remember being there.
Yep, and they could have joined it and they didn't want to.
Yeah, we thought that was crazy at the time.
We too.
Actually, the other thing that came up with a couple of years ago, and this may not be you folks, the owner said that she wanted to create a 2-family home there. And I said, oh, interesting.
That's not allowed.
And so I called the town and they said, no, she can't do that. So I'm always a little bit suspicious about the purpose of this addition and what the makeup of it is going to be, in addition to the wetlands issue. And I think that that's not your purview, but it's a concern of mine.
Sure. Yeah, it's a fair one. So we'll keep our eyes open, and I encourage you to, ask questions of the building department and the Board of Health on that very issue.
Okay, we're going into the debate, so you probably want to go to the next thing if we think we've covered everything.
True enough. All right, thank you both, and we'll see you on Saturday the 28th. It's probably going to be about 9:30, something like that, 9:45.
We might come to the other two since they're so close.
Oh, good. All right, fair enough.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks all to everybody. All right, we'll see everybody on the 28th, Saturday at about 9:30.
Great.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is 76 Cliff Road. This is a certificate of compliance. And Bridget, I see you.
Hello.
Hi, tell us what you've done.
Hi, I'm Bridget Gaffney. I'm the property owner at 76 Cliff Road. And I don't know if I need to share a screen or anything, but if that's helpful.
We can't see it yet.
Oh, it says it's disabled.
Oh, Hans, can you give her permission to share?
I think you got it.
Now.
There you
Okay.
go.
So
Now we see it.
Excellent. In 2019, we had submitted our initial requested order of conditions for building an extension onto the house right here, kind of squaring it off, building a porch, putting in a pool, patio around it. And I think that was the gist of it. That work was completed in 2020. And as it was finishing up, we started we started looking at our garage to make it so it was more useful to fit cars, sort of like the modern sized cars in it. It was a very small garage. So we requested an amendment to the initial order of conditions, which was approved we requested it 2020, and that was approved through 2025. As part of that, we also had to, that was approved, and then we had to request an extension for 3 years because at the time we had to get a variance to work on the garage from building because it's so close to our property line. And that approval process took 2 years because they had shut down residential applications during the, they were processing a lot of housing requests for subsidized housing. So it took us over 2 years to get that approval. So here we are in 2024. We've completed the work on the garage. So 4 years later. so the garage work that we did, this square or rectangle area right here, we added 4 feet onto the front of the garage. And then we raised the roof on the garage and put in a second level for storage. And then we resurfaced the driveway. So that's the work. It is now complete. And in between our initial completion of the bigger project over here, when we were applying for the amendment, Stephen Ives came by and had a sort of initial or interim site visit, as part of our application process for this amendment. So that's where we are now.
All right,
And-
we've got a lot of your applications and extensions that I'm going through right now. But what I'm looking for is, do you have a letter attesting to the fact that the project was completed in substantial compliance with the order conditions?
Yes, I had submitted that with, when I sent the documents into Philip. That was part of it.
This the July 19th document, Bridget?
From this year, yes.
Okay, we have it.
Yes.
The tree still there on the line, Bridget?
Sorry, let me get my document back.
On the
This
side?
28-inch one?
Yeah.
No, that was the one that we had, the neighbor and us agreed to take it down.
I thought that was the case. And when I saw it there, I wanted to ask for an update.
We did.
Okay.
There's another tree that's on their property that a giant limb broke off and almost totaled both of our cars 2 years ago. So this one had a substantial amount of
Disease.
decay in
Yeah.
the middle. Yeah. So, I did also submit, I'm not sure if Philip was able to share it prior to the meeting, but I have a list of plants we've added, and we've put in about 15 trees. They're smaller trees, right? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 trees and then some shrubs or dwarf trees. I'm not sure if this document shows up on the screen.
Yeah, when were the trees planted? We've got a 75% survivability standard of practice.
The Amelanchier are 3 or 4 years old, I think.
Okay.
The Cornus Florida is also. The Emerald Greens, they're 2.5 years, I think. 2 of them were replaced. 2 of them died in the drought, and I had to replace them. The 2 Eastern Red Buds are 1 year and 2 years both. They're doing great. The Birch is doing well. That's about 2 years, I think, as well. The Juniper did not do well. Cedar rust practically killed it. So it's, I don't think I'd replace it with a Juniper because I think it would get the same condition. And then I have 2 of these Chamaesia Paris that are ready to be planted. The oak leaves are doing great. I had 4 hollies. 2 of them died in the drought, actually. The beautyberry's it's been in for 2 years. The viburnums have been in for the first one 3 years, the second one 1 year, but the rabbits keep eating it.
Okay.
The rhododendron's been in for 4 years. The summer sweet's been in for 2 years. I've got a couple bottle brush buckeye I want to plant near the back. The gray owl is about 1 year old, and then the rest are a bunch of perennials, and they seem to be doing very well this summer, except the ones that the rabbits like to eat.
All right, Bridget, you're straining my mathematical capabilities here. Is that 75% survivability that you just told us? Because I stopped counting on the numbers.
All of these that are listed with numbers are surviving and flourishing, except the juniper.
Understood.
So, is that
right? And I do have your final construction control document. Hans,
Yeah.
I know that, you're fairly strict on this. And I'm not throwing you under the bus for that, because I'm fairly strict on it too. But if you read the last document, which is attached to the request for certificate of compliance in our packet, this appears to be sufficient for me, but it doesn't say in substantial compliance with approved plans. What it says is, having been present at intervals appropriate to the stage of construction to become generally familiar with the progress and quality of the work, and determine if the work was performed in a manner consistent with the construction documents and this code. Is that satisfactory to you, that it's a functional equivalent of substantial compliance with plans?
So, Bridget, the plan that you're showing here, that was done by a professional land surveyor, do you still have access to them? And it looks
The
like
surveyor?
yeah, it looks like they've done the existing conditions plan that shows the pool and the patio, and whoever created this plan that you're showing on the.
Well, this is just for the garage though, isn't it?
Yeah, we did that a long time ago, John, I believe.
No, I'm agreeing with you, Arthur. I was asking.
Well, this was updated to include the garage when we did the amendment.
Yeah, the order of condition was, but I thought didn't we issue the certificate of compliance for the other work?
I believe so.
That was my recollection, John.
Yeah. And I think we filed it with the, we have to file it with the Registry of Deeds, right?
Sorry, I was confused
Yes.
because I have two copies of the same filing, so I thought there were two different ones. Yeah, I mean, if this is just for the garage, I don't see a huge issue with it. I mean, technically it's supposed to say it's in substantial conformance with the Wetlands Protection Act, but yeah, I mean, this shows that it conforms with the building code. Generally, I see that as being, consistent with the plans, provided the plans are the same ones that were provided to the Conservation Commission.
Correct. And Bridget, so you know what we're talking about. The attestation has to be that the project was completed in conformance with the plans that we approved.
Yes.
So it doesn't exactly say that, but I think that's the fair import of what he's saying in the letter. And
Okay.
it is stamped by a professional engineer, whose name I can't read.
Bruce Bradford.
Is it?
And then there's another one from the,
Marty, I'm looking at Marty.
yes, that was the
Not
garage.
Bolian.
Yeah,
For the
I thought
garage work.
you're
Yeah.
talking about the garage. Yes. Which one are you referring to, Tom?
The one
The
that's
one
showing
on the screen.
Yeah, so that was from the, when we applied for, is it the certificate of compliance for the first part? This signature was for, this stamp is for that, the
Yeah.
initial bigger project. And then the document submitted was for the specific garage
The
work.
garage, right. That's the one I've got in my hand here. Okay. So, all right, Hans, as long as you're okay with it, I'm
Yeah,
okay.
I mean-
Does anybody think we need to look at it?
No.
I do not, but if anybody would like to, we can add it to the site visit. Otherwise, we can vote. Any thoughts? Arthur, Tom, Ingrid, Hans, Wendy?
I would move adoption of the certificate of compliance for 76 Cliff Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thanks, Hans. Any discussion? I should ask first, are there any abutters or members of the public that wish to be heard or ask a question? I hear nothing, I see nothing, so therefore we'll move forward with the vote. Hearing no discussion from commission members. Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Kiernan, I vote yes as well. Tom Palmer?
Yes.
Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wendy, I can't see you, but I know you're there somewhere.
I'm still here. Yes,
Good, good.
I vote yes. Although
Good.
I have to say, I'm sad that we're not going to do a site visit, but Bridget, I really wanted to see this.
Oh.
We
A
can
lot
do
of
it
people walk up and down the street here to look at the garden, so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, your project was the very first one that I heard as a new commissioner, and it's been delightful to see it progress through the years, and
And it has
I've
been
always wanted to
years.
see it.
Oh, that's
Thank you,
great.
Wendy.
Great. Ingrid, I don't see you, but how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So that's unanimous, Bridget. You're all set. You've got your certificate of compliance. So thank you for your attendance and patience tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is 113 Woodland Road, certificate of compliance. And this one must be Nancy. Yes, it is. No? Yes. Good.
Ma'am, you're muted.
We can't hear her.
You're still muted, Nancy? There you go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, hi.
Okay. Hi.
Thank you. We're here for 113 Woodland Road to request the certificate of compliance. The project was permitted in, I think, June of 2021. The construction started in June of 2022, and we finished it in August of 2022. So we are now at the 2-year point with our plantings, which is why we're coming before you now. As you may remember, this project was, the initial permit was to allow for restorations to violations of the bylaw. The violations being specifically that lawn was planted in the bordering in the BVW and in part of the 25-foot zone. Would you like me to share the drawing?
Oh, that'd be great, Nancy. Thank you.
Sure.
Hans, can you let her in?
Yep. I should be all set now.
Okay, let me try to do it. Let's see. This is the one I want to share. Okay. Everyone see it?
Yes.
Great. So this was the proposed drawing. I did submit, we submitted an as-built plan, but if this is easy to read, you can compare the two. But right here, you'll see that the property had a lot of wetlands. We have the buffer zone is here where my cursor is moving, okay? And then the 25-foot zone is here very close to the house. So our brief was to revegetate this area here that had been turned into lawn. Stephanie Toomey, the homeowner, is also here in the meeting. So we planted this with trees and everything native, trees, shrubs, and perennials. We were allowed by the commission to retain a portion of the lawn in the 25-foot zone, which is what you see right here. And you permitted that because almost all of the property except for the house is actually in the buffer zone. So this was the only place they would have for a lawn. We also planted here this large bed here, which had previously been turned into lawn. So we put this back to plantings. This is all native shrubs and ferns. We had an area over here by the street that what we proposed to let revert to woods. We also requested a patio, a small amount of which would be in the 25-foot zone. At the time, you approved 45 square feet in the zone. We actually built it smaller than that. It ended up with maybe, I think, 33 square feet in this zone here. So we've had pretty good success, as I said in my letter to you, over time with the plantings. We had great success with the shrubs. We had about 45 shrubs, and as of my inventory this past June, I think we had about 42 of them left. We had really good luck with the perennials. You'll see if you make a site visit, the ferns and the rain garden. There's 2 rain gardens. There's one here and there's one here. Those came in really nicely. We lost a few things to rabbits, but not too bad. We did lose a couple of the initial trees that we planted. We had planted 2 swamp oaks, Quercus bicolor, and we lost those the first year. we planted in June, and by maybe September, those had died. And so we replaced them with 2 Nyssa sylvatica, which have done great. So apparently the Nyssa can tolerate the wet roots a lot better than the swamp oak, which surprised me. But we also lost one of the Pinus strobus, and we replaced that with a river birch. So we do now have 6 of 6. We originally had 8 trees. We now have 6 trees. So I think that's 75%. So it's really, I have to say, I'm really happy with it. It's a very beautiful piece of property here in Milton. One of my favorite properties that I've worked on in Milton, just because of the natural assets of the property, the light, the woodland. But I think that the plantings that we've done have really brought out that woodland character in a simple but really nice way.
Nancy, can I ask you a question and perhaps a favor?
Yes.
And I know I'm going to sound like a form over substance guy, but you just heard us talking about the magic word substantial compliance with the project. In your letter that I'm reading it, and I know what you mean, the property is beautiful. The homeowners have done a wonderful job working with me to observe the orders, taking care of the new plantings. So I know it sounds like the same thing, but could you submit, you can even do a PS at the bottom and use the same letter and just say that means substantial compliance with our order of conditions.
You just want those words, substantial compliance?
They're magic words.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had said at the beginning of the letter that we, all conditions set forth in the OOC were followed, but substantial compliance is easy to do.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Any questions? And you're right. It is a beautiful piece of property, and John and Stephanie are very fortunate to be there. Any questions from commissioners? None. Abutters, members of the public? With no questions, is there a motion to issue a certificate of compliance contingent upon Nancy's amended, revised with the magical language letter? Is there such a motion?
So moved.
All right, thanks, Ingrid. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Any discussion? Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Kieran, I vote yes. Tom Palmer?
Yes.
Ingrid Beatty?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Arthur, I can't see you, but I know you're there.
Yes.
All right, and I got you, Wendy, right?
Yes. You
Okay,
did.
good. I think that's everybody. All right, so that's full compliance. And if you could just send that revised letter,
Sure.
Nancy, to Phil Driscoll, and he can put it in our file.
Do you want a print copy or email?
Either one is fine.
Okay, sure thing, we'll do. Thank you so
All
much.
right, that's perfect. So
Okay.
you have your certificate of compliance, and thank you, and say hello to the Toomies.
Thank you.
All right, great. That brings us to that's number 9. Number 10 is new business. 11 is adjournment. Any new business?
No, wait a minute. 10, that's not the revised one. 10 is Glover School PTO.
I'm sorry. Say again. You're right. I'm not looking at the revised one. What is it, Phil?
The Glover School PTO.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I apologize to you because I'm looking at the wrong agenda. Glover School. Perfect.
I can speak on behalf of the Glover PTO. I am Ellie Fisher, and I'm here along with Isabel Farrar as Glover PTO, Parent Teacher Organization board members. Thank you so much for putting us on tonight's agenda at such short notice. The Glover PTO is applying for funding through the Community Preservation Committee, and we are requesting your support. I shared with you via Philip a brief summary of this proposed project and a link to our eligibility application, which is the first of 2 submissions required by the CPC. So I won't go into too much detail. Essentially, we are applying for Community Preservation Act funding to improve parts of Glover's grounds for multi-purpose recreational use. Specifically, we are looking to improve drainage, regrade, sod the backfield at Glover for public recreational use, such as youth sport practices. We are also looking to plant shade trees to help mitigate heat on this public piece of land. We are under the impression that if we were to receive CPC funding and if we could secure trees by other means, such as by working with the Conservation Commission, we could redirect the remaining funds. And we would be amenable to using the remaining CPC funds to help manage invasive species, initiate a public education campaign focused on the wetlands, Pine Tree Brook, Turner's Pond, as well as the native flora and fauna that live there. So in closing, we ask that you, the members of the Conservation Commission, vote in favor of providing a letter of support to accompany our CPC application.
Oh, thank you very much, Ellie. That's a nice presentation. Wendy, I think you probably have some thoughts or comments.
Yes, Ellie and Steve Ivis and I had a wonderful visit at the site last week, and Steve and I were both very impressed with the work that the PTO is doing and very excited about what's being proposed. And we spoke with Ellie just in a very preliminary way about the steps that Glover School would need to go through in order to have their project permitted. And Ellie was very open and amenable to that. And I'm hopeful that perhaps in addition to providing some letter of support or other recognition to the Community Preservation Committee, that perhaps we as a commission might be able to discuss the possibility of allocating some of the funds from I'm not going to call it the tree bank, but you know what I mean.
I do. I do. And Ellie, for your benefit, and Isabel as well, we do have a revolving account that we basically fund through fines and fees that we collect over the year. But under the town meeting article, we're limited to $15,000 expenditure per year from that account. The reference to the tree bank, and I'm sure Wendy's explained to you, it's my fault because I never should have used the word bank. It's like an hypothetical inventory of credits. So we do have some credits that are still there. I think that Wollaston has given us some trees, and I know we're still trying to pin that down. And Kathy Bowen may be the key to finding the actual credit list of trees. But I mean, yes, this is a very worthwhile project. We have to be careful about expenditures. It would have to be an actual request for a particular amount. Which brings me to, I made a comment that in your proposal, I think you had a proposal from a vendor for about $2,000 a tree. That's extremely high, at least in our world, because we basically charge people about $500 a tree, and that's planted. Granted, it's a small caliper, and it might be smaller than you're envisioning. But that $2,000, I think it was like $37,000 you had as a proposal. That just my experience with looking for CPA money, Wendy. We have to put that to bid if it gets over $20,000. So it's got to go to a bid anyway. So just be careful about the dollar amount. And understand that at that level, excess of 20,000, you're going to have to put it to bid. But Peter Mello, who is the town council, is he's accessible, he's cooperative, and he'll help you walk through that process. Now, one other comment, and again, this is not negative in any sense because I'm enthusiastically supporting this. But there's like something you should be aware of, and that is at the last school building push in like late 1990s, early 2000s, when we had 6 new schools or 3 new schools and 6 rehab schools. I'm sorry, 3 rehab schools. We did extend the Glover field there. And that was, we're very aware of the drainage issues on that field. And we're very aware of why it's failed and how it's failing. The reason we're so aware of it is that Pete Jackson and others have tried to well, back in 2010, Charlie Gamer and Pete Jackson they were instrumental in getting the first handicapped access pathway around Turner's Pond. And then from 2010 to 2023, it started to fail. So they did it again. Charlie passed away, but Pete Jackson got the DPW basically to support them in a new project to resurface that handicapped accessible pathway. The problem that they've had with it is that the area of land next to that field is a disaster in terms of drainage. And it's going to be complicated, and you're going to have to come back before us to permit it, and we will enthusiastically assist you in that process. But it's a difficult area, and there are some complexities in, where does the water come from, where does it go, and how do we keep the water from destroying the pathway, the handicap pathway around Turner's. But I guess my only point is we need to coordinate
Yes.
with all of the bodies and the stakeholders.
Can I ask, what is the scope of the project? Because the package I saw showed proposed trees in the locations, but it didn't say what other work might be involved. I'd just like to know what else is there to the project besides planting the trees? Does it include rehabbing the field?
Yes, the scope of the project that falls under the Community Preservation Committee grant that we're applying for has two parts to it. The first part is the field, addressing the field, and the second part is planting additional shade trees.
All right, I'd just like to remark that I did happen to wander in there this summer, and I went back in the field, and yes, it did give me a dank feeling. I just had that sort of moist feeling. It was a muggy day anyways, but something else I discovered about it that I thought was unfortunate was that fence that's around it is complete. So when you go in that field, you go in the bottom of the bag and there's no way out except the way you came in. And it just seems kind of unfortunate from a design point of view that you can't connect to the trail around Turner. And if you're a student who happens to like nature, you can't connect with any of the woods around the field. So the obvious solution, I guess, is to put that fence somewhere that it isn't blocking off access to the rest of the area from the field. That was just something I noticed about it. It seemed not welcoming in that respect. I felt kind of trapped.
I believe that's a safety issue, though. Just as far as, making sure that the kids that are on the playground are safe and
safe from the woods.
Well, I mean, safe from perhaps wandering off and drowning in the pond. I mean,
yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. That's something you have to be aware of.
But Thomas, my name is Isabel Farrar. I'm also on the Glover PTO with Ellie Fisher. Ellie has been doing the lion's share of the work, and I've been assisting her as ably as I can. Thank you so much for visiting the site and for your feedback. We really appreciate it, all of you. One thing to note is that in that back corner, close to the Turner's Pond path, where there are all those drainage issues, there is actually a gate that is locked most of the time. And Wendy, I do think that it is because of safety issues. But for example, the main gate to Glover from Turner's Pond is kept open during the day when school is not in session. And so potentially we could explore having the space more accessible to the community and connecting it to the path through the back of the field as well. And as a resident, I would love to be able to cut through to the field that way. And so that's certainly something that we could explore both with Cody Klein, the landscape architect, who's donating his time to our project, and also exploring it with Karen McDavitt, the principal, and the custodian, who is the one who locks and unlocks the gates.
Thank you.
I'm curious, Ellie or Isabel, do you know if the fence is along the property line perimeter of the school?
It's not. I know that myself. I just looked at it. I could share my screen and show you.
That'd be great. Hans,
Yeah.
can you let him in?
You know, I'm asking because I'm wondering if it would be a possibility to expand the play area to actually include some of the more wild wooded area so that kids could go back in there, but yet still be within the perimeter of the fence. You know, just allowing for more of a natural playground than just a manufactured hardscape playground.
I'm looking at the aerial now that shows the property lines. I don't know if you can see it too.
We can't, Tom. Hans, did you let him in to share, to screen share?
I did.
Are you talking about, are we talking about the west, the part of the land that is facing west?
Yes.
Because it gets pretty wet, and there's a ton of poison ivy there.
Poison ivy, yeah.
Oh, there's a ton of it.
Actually, that is something that Steve and Ellie and I had an extensive conversation about, was the dramatic amount of invasive species that are back there. And it's a long list. It's not just poison ivy, unfortunately.
Right.
And at the time, the application as it stands didn't mention anything about trying to address the invasive species issues, but that is something that Ellie is open to consideration.
Right. It's going to be a lot of work for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that aerial now?
Yes, we can, Tom.
All right. You see the yellow line on the left side of the Glover lot, and you also see the field. So it may be that a lot of those woods around the field are wet. Certainly they are on the west side, but the fence follows the field closely. So you see there's a lot of those woods that are just basically walled off by that fence. I'm going to stop sharing now unless you have a question.
No, who's on the other side of the yellow line? Is that park department land as opposed to school department land?
Yeah. Well, you see the trail goes right through it.
Yes, I do.
But up on the north, you have single family home lots off Eric.
Understood.
Yeah, just thinking of kids wanting to enjoy the outdoors. I recognize a safety issue, but it does seem like the outdoors is sort of walled off. That was my impression. I'm going to stop sharing now.
All right, thanks, Tom.
It is a chain link fence, so presumably the fence could be moved without extensive fence.
I wouldn't want to teach the kids, don't go to the woods. They're scary.
Right.
Stay out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The trolls.
Yeah, they're dark. They're evil.
John, one of the other things that Ellie, one of the things that Ellie and Steve and I spoke about was that there is a possibility that the rehab of the field may be more extensive than what is
very expensive. Because it's not going to work if you just kind of put some sod down and plant some grass. That really has to do some excavation to the underpinnings and the subsoils. That's a major project.
I think you need a lot of fill to bring it up higher. That's ultimately what you got to do.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but it looks like a big project. And actually, just to give you an idea, we the Conservation Commission had a CPC project proposal to do a handicapped accessible walkway all around Pope's Pond. And Pete Jackson's the one that gave me the heads up. He said, listen, you can get a study done on that for about 45,000. And I worked with Chase Berkeley at DPW for that as well to give me the pricing. But he said, if you actually want to put that in, because there's so much work in terms of elevation and this is the pathway. This is not, restructuring a field with drainage issues. But he said it's going to run about 750,000. I was shocked. But I know the rehab of the trail, DPW put in 165,000 for that rehabbed trail, and it doesn't work very well. We've got existing problems, and that's after 165,000. So that just gives you a sense of, what you're looking at. If you're going to, revamp the field and change the drainage structure, that's a big deal. But yeah, actually, Kevin Chisholm from Park Department could give you some pricing ideas on that. And if you could talk fast and get to Chase before he leaves us, he's a huge source. He's a great source of information, particularly about, contract pricing and, good vendors to use. He's a huge resource for the town.
Yes, we've been in touch with both Kevin and Chase already.
Good, perfect.
Do Kevin and or Chase have any historic information about the field? Were they on board when the field was built?
I didn't ask them that, but I did talk to Kevin Donahue, who is a lifelong Milton resident and has been on the school committee. And he recommended that I get in touch with Glenn Pavlicek, who might have some historical knowledge surrounding the building of the extension of Glover, and then the what happened to the field during that expansion project. So I will put an email out to Glenn and find out if he knows. I can also go back to Chase and Kevin and see if they recall anything.
No, we have a file. We permitted it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, the Conservation Commission has a file on it. And we did all the schools.
Ah.
That's not true. I don't think we had any jurisdiction over Tucker, but the other ones we did.
And so to request that information, what do we do?
I can't see Phil, but I think he's still on. Phil, are you there?
I am.
All right. Can you take a look at that? It would be somewhere around 2001. My wife was the chairman of the school committee at the time, and she was on the school building committee. So she may have a file on it, but I know the Conservation Commission does when they were building out Glover School. And I'm guessing it would probably be, it was late. It's probably 2001, Phil.
Okay,
and if you can't find it, we had kind of a gap in our record keeping in those days. But Kathy Bowen might have some ideas as to where in the sub-basement of Town Hall you might find something from 2001.
All right, I'll contact Kathy Bowen and then get back to Ellie.
You know who else would know is who's the architect that the town used? GRA? I think it was GRA. They were the architect for all of the school buildings that we did in 2001 and 2002. So they would have very, very detailed plans. And if it's not GRA, it's something close to that. But I'll find it out for you and I'll get it to
Thank you.
Who the architect was for the town.
I'm curious, is this the typical life expectancy of a soccer field?
Yes. Yeah.
Is
We just went through that at Lower Guile Road. That's the problem. They wear out.
It just seems to me like in this particular site that there's something else going on rather than just typical wear and tear. That, I'm wondering if it's
wet
wear and tear and perhaps a change in hydrology that wasn't accounted for back when this was permitted 20 something years ago. I just want to make sure that, if there were mistakes or oversights that were
We don't do it again. Right.
made 22 years ago, that we correct those and we learn from them and hopefully get a field that's going to last Glover School longer. I mean, especially because you guys are intending to open this field to the public. So it's going to get a lot more than just typical wear and tear from the school kids. But there's a huge demand, as we know, in town for these athletic fields. So I'm wondering if we can offer Ellie and Isabel any advice for the best way of moving forward in a way that is efficient time-wise, but also financially.
Yeah, my advice is to coordinate with everybody. And when I say everybody, look at the controversy that arose out of the Lower Guile Road field. It all had to do with excess use of an athletic field. And everybody was on the side of the Angels because some people were saying you got to protect kids' health, and the other ones were saying, well, you got to protect kids' athleticism and have them exercise and breathe fresh air. And everybody was right. But it became pretty controversial. But there's a lot of data that Kevin Chisholm has in terms of the number of hours that you can use a field for in practice. And its typical field is about 600 hours per year. And the problem is if you overuse it with soccer, lacrosse, football, Pop Warner kind of football, not high school football, but you're going to tear up that field. And therefore, there was a push towards the artificial turf that gets you about 3 times the hour usage. It's about 1,800 hours a year. So that's why a lot of the school, some of the school teams, but also the youth leagues, soccer, lacrosse, football, rugby, everybody, they wanted to use the fields, and that kind of pressure drove the park department towards the artificial turf. So it's going to come up. I mean, we haven't heard it yet, but I understand that Milton Academy is going to come to the Conservation Commission because they want to change their football field to artificial turf. And it's right next to O'Hare Pond. So we have to permit that. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told it's coming. So it's a big issue. And it's a passionate issue, so be careful.
Yes.
But my only point is to coordinate with all the stakeholders. And it's not just, the town organizations, it's some of the youth sports teams. And you can get some pretty good insight as to what the issues are and what the costs are as well.
And one other thought that I was hoping we could briefly touch on is that since Ellie and Isabel were not aware of the permitting layer of complexity initially, I'm wondering if we could give them an idea of what kind of a timeline they might expect in order to walk through that process and in a best case scenario have permit in hand so that they would be able to proceed with their project.
That's easy. It depends. I mean, if you came in with a plan for an artificial turf field, you're going to be looking at a year plus. If you come in with a grass field, it'll be much faster, but you're going to have financial pushback because that was the whole park department, school department issue. We can't afford to replant, to fertilize, to care for those fields. So you're going to get financial pushback there as well. So there's a balancing that goes on, but just a regular permitting process is probably a year. I mean, before you actually, break ground.
An artificial field was not, I don't recall that being under consideration at all, was it?
No, that's never been under consideration. And that's not something that Isabel or I am in support of.
Correct. And so for the permitting also, because as Ellie described, the project has two parts, the field rehab and also the shade trees. What would the permitting look like for planting shade trees around the playground and the back of the school? Understanding that, as Wendy mentions, Ellie and I were not aware of the permitting process, and separately we've planted already some trees in the front of the school that would have to be part of a separate permitting application.
That would be pretty quick. You could do that in a couple of months.
Wonderful.
I agree. That ought to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just want to use some caution in if you are going to move forward with redeveloping the field in the back, that you're not kind of shooting yourself in the foot with the installation of the trees. So just be mindful of, try to plan ahead on that, because trees are usually, for that kind of development, trees are usually the last step in the process. So.
Right.
Yes,
if the field requires a significant elevation change, which it probably will, that's a big deal. It's like the 40B project at 648, 652 Canton Avenue. I mean, they're bringing in they propose to bring in 53,000 cubic yards of fill to raise a 5-acre parcel of land, an average of 5 feet. That's a lot of fill. That's a lot of trucks. And that's a pretty lengthy permitting process. So and I'm not trying to second guess how to rehab the field. I don't know. But if you had to bring in fill, it requires a other set of permits. You have to get by the town has a fill bylaw. So if you bring in over 1,000 cubic yards, you have to get a permit from the building department for that. So there are different components to that. And you have to be careful because you don't want to be putting construction debris on top of a field. And you can get that for either no money or cheap. But in order to make sure that you don't have pieces of brick and concrete and extra pieces of rebar, you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that changes your fill price a lot. And that's why somebody and hopefully whoever replaces.
And to Hans's point too, I didn't consider that. As Hans was saying, usually the trees are sort of the icing on the cake, right? And it just occurred to me that if you're going to be bringing in heavy equipment for the field, then also you could be compacting all the new tree roots of the beautiful trees that you just put in and killing them.
So my suggestion for that would be, if you're working with a landscape architect, just get some feedback on the construction process and what your plan is. If that's a qualified individual, they'll be able to line that out for you pretty well as to which steps to do first, and if there's certain aspects that maybe you can work in certain areas, but just with an understanding, then it might constrain you going forward.
Are we good?
Yes.
We can get a plan, and what I would suggest is that we have a public meeting on the 28th, which will be announced. We put this on the agenda. In the meantime, Wendy, you could draft the resolution of support. And there's no magic to it. We've done it before. In fact, we could probably Arthur, you could probably dictate it right now, because we've done these before, that the conservation, agrees with and supports the Glover PTO in their quest to plant trees and rehab the backfield. It could be as simple as that. So if we need a resolution, it could be fancier than that. That's why I said, Wendy, you might want to draft something more eloquent. But if that basic thing is all you need, we could do it right now and take a vote to support a resolution to support the Glover PTO. Yes. What? Yes.
I as much as I am in favor of a letter of support from the commission, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be the one to draft it, seeing as I am the representative.
Oh, yeah, the
on
recipient.
committee.
It's like talking out of both sides of your mouth, like lawyers do, right? Okay. You can send the letter to yourself.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, well, why don't we just,
I think it's fine for me to vote in favor of it and fine for me to sign it as a member of the commission, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to be the one drafting it.
all right, why don't we just take the simple approach and just say that, is there a motion to pass a resolution in support of the Glover PTO in their quest for CPC funding or CPA funding to support the tree plantings and rehabilitation of the athletic field at Glover School? Is that sufficient? I don't want to misstate what your application says, but it's basically, as I understand it, tree planting and rehabilitation of the field.
That's all I mean, all is perhaps the wrong qualifier, but that is what we're trying to do. That accurately describes our efforts.
All right.
So,
did Elian, did you draft a proposal for us to consider yourselves already, or no? Okay, you're leaving it to us. So I think, Mr. Chairman, that I would move to have the Conservation Commission endorse the proposal that's put before us. We have the letter, and we can just do the appropriate wording.
Right, but essentially if we have to vote on it, we have to know what we're voting on, and it's to support the Glover PTO's request for CPC funding.
Right, and that's all in the letter that they submitted to us.
I'm sorry, say that again?
All that's outlined in the letter that they submitted to us, which I can't find right now. You guys have put it aside for one question.
Yeah, no, I know it is. It's just that if Philip is taking notes, I don't know if you are, Phil, but it should show up in our minutes that we voted to pass a resolution to endorse the Glover PTO request for CPC funding for tree plantings and athletic field rehabilitation at the Glover School.
So if you are looking for something in writing, I'd be happy to do that. My daughter went to Glover dad. So, but yeah, I'll leave it to you to decide if a vote is sufficient.
Okay, what I was trying to do is get a vote.
Yep.
So that we don't have to wait for the letter.
Yeah.
But if we vote for it, and then Hans, you can
So
craft.
Arthur made a motion. I'd be happy to second that motion.
We're all on the same page.
We are indeed. All right, any discussion?
Yes, I have one point. First, I want to applaud you for your sensitivity to the shade trees, and particularly their importance with respect to temperature and the safety and health of our youth. One observation I had in the letter, and I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me, is that there was a citation to the effect of including dog recreation. That's a paraphrasing. And I would suggest that you take a closer look at that with respect to what's intended, because this is school, youth, young children's property areas. People can dog walk right around Turner's Pond, adjacent to the Glover School. And hopefully someday we will have dog parks in the town of Milton.
Right.
That'll help all of our citizens with dog recreation in appropriate settings.
Right. I didn't realize that was part of it. That's a political hot button. Be careful of that one.
Thank you for
Noted.
flagging that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd just like to say I think this is an appropriate use of CPC funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So the motion is made by Arthur, seconded by Hans. Any discussion? Hearing none. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
I, John Tiernan, vote yes as well. Hans?
An emphatic yes.
Okay. Wendy?
Yes.
And Ingrid?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
All right, good. So you got a unanimous endorsement for your proposal.
Thank you very
And
much.
Hans will get the letter to you. Just, Hans, if you could run it through Philip so we have it on our file.
Sure.
Okay.
And,
Perfect.
And also, there was the second part of the discussion as well about the possibility of funding for the trees.
Well, we have to have a proposal for that, Wendy. We can't do that. You can't write blank checks in
Nope.
municipal law. So we'd have to have, there's an application for X number of trees or, X number of dollars and cents. So that's the same issue that came up with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee about 4 years ago. They came to us with a blue sky resolution, which was fine. But we said, come back to us, please, with an actual budget proposal, dollars and cents. Because it's got to go through the town accountant. And they don't add up blue sky stuff. They add up numbers. So we'd have to have a proposal.
We would gladly share put together an application for the commission's consideration, taking into account all of the feedback that we've gotten.
That's fine. We'll look forward to that. All right. And anything else? Wendy?
No.
Okay. All right, we're good? Ellie, Isabel, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for extending the agenda for us.
Oh, of course. You guys have earned your place in heaven.
Working on it.
All right, thank you. Philip, I can't see you, but do we have another agenda?
We do.
What is
Devin Howe from the 30 Curtis Road is going to speak.
Oh, what's the address, Devin?
30 Curtis Road.
Okay. All right, thanks. And Devin, thanks for your patience. I know it's been a long evening.
No, I've learned a lot tonight, so.
Okay.
If the chair would allow me, I'll just jump right in. Know that it's late in the hour. So Devin Howe from Beals Associates here speaking on behalf of the management company of 30 Curtis Road, which is also known as the Uncrity House. As the commission may remember, we previously represented before the Milton residences for the elderly, also the management firm for Winter Valley residences. This is another property that they manage in town. And if it's okay with the chair, I'd just like to share my screen to just give the commission a brief introduction on what our project is, where it is, and just a brief overview of it.
Sure. Hans, can you invite him in?
Should be good to go already.
Good.
So if the commission's familiar, we have Blue Hills Parkway on the left-hand side of the screen here. The property itself is this that I'm outlining, 30 Curtis Road. Down by the Blue Hills Parkway on the west side, the Neponset River on the northern side, the NVTA Mattapan spot across the river, and then kind of on the southern and eastern sides of the property are some residential area. What we've been tasked with by MRE is to address some erosion issues out there. So this is on the western side of the building. This is a visitor parking area. And you can see there's some erosion forming along the edge of the road here. It's within the 200-foot riverfront area of the Neponset River. And what's happening is it looks like water's just, there's really no curbing out here. There was a patch here, but it looks like water is just kind of running along this edge, eroding it out until it flows into a catch basin that discharges directly into the Neponset River. So what we are going to be filing for this, we'd like to get the commission's input on whether this is an RDA or NOI. And the other part of this project as well is there's a collapsed culvert that's actually up here. This is looking from the Neponset River back into the site. You can see this gully erosion that's occurred. Obviously, there's a bunch of trash in this photo as well, which I'll get into a second. But where this erosion is occurring is right next to some dumpster pads from what we understand is a collapsed culvert. So we'd like to propose a plan. Right now there is survey ongoing on the site to figure out where property ownership is, utilities, stormwater, what exists on that site today, but we're looking at cleaning this area up, restoring it, probably putting some sort of riprap outlet protection to slow that water down before it goes to the Neponset. And when I was actually out there, we were actually out there a few weeks ago delineating the Neponset River. We also noticed that there's this actually a chain link fence that's more or less acting as retaining wall. This was not the first intention of our project. The initial project was to look at the erosion, look at how to fix it. And when we were on site, we identified that there was this buildup of trash, this slope, and obviously you can see that's about waist high, so about 4 feet of trash that's been there for quite an exceptional period of time, it would appear. So we'd like to also, as just being the good stewards of this area, this trash that really has a vegetated slope above it, clean that all out, repair that slope, and restore this area. With that said, we would like to request a site walk with the commission. Actually getting down into this area, it is quite difficult. There is no gate that we could find to get down here. The only access that we had on site was to actually crawl under the fence, which I'm more than happy to do. Not sure about the commission yourselves, but we still think it would be quite helpful to meet on site, see these areas in person, and get an idea from the commission whether you believe would be appropriate for a RDA or notice of intent for this project. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and answer any questions.
Sure, no, that's fine. It looks like you've got a good project in mind here. My gut reaction is that's definitely a notice of intent, because when I was looking at the slope, that it looks like it's being retained by a chain link fence, which is a little scary. That looks like a lot of earth moving in there. You're going to have to bring in fill or cut into that. I don't know how you're going to retain that. When you take the trash out, I have no idea what's going to happen to that slope. And then the collapsed culvert, that looks like a lot of work. And it's going to have, heavy equipment in there. Yeah, that's a job. But I don't say that to make it complicated from a bureaucratic point of view. I think we can work with you pretty cooperatively to get this done, because it looks like a good project.
No, Chairman, I think you bring up a great point, and that's especially with this project, we have one of our surveyors we work commonly with go out there and do a full survey of these areas to make sure that we have a full understanding. And also being right next to the Neponset River, we're actually hoping to get the survey back this week and get some boundaries, but not sure what the ownership even is in this area. I think we have a good project here, but I think we can definitely better the area what it is right now, but certainly agree that the notice of intent would be fine with us.
Yeah, if you can get us that survey result, we could put this on the agenda for the 28th of September. We'd probably be there about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
That's acceptable to you?
That works for me.
All right, good. All right, Philip, if you could add that to the agenda for the...
No problem.
Perfect. All right, good. All right, any questions from commissioners?
I'd just like to mention that we've sort of been on the other side of that fence. Before I was on the commission, I was a consultant for Lucian, who lives at 531 Elliott, which has a shared boundary with this site. And as you remember, the chain link fence we could see, and it was bending over into Lucian's property. And I'm wondering if this channel we're seeing here is the one that goes down his lot line. You may not know that the garage at 531 has a culvert outfall on the north side of it. Yeah, that garage. Behind that garage, there is a stormwater outfall that drains something like 12 acres of Milton, the residential area to the south. It comes out there, it runs along your fence and into the river. And when you have a survey, I think you may find that the higher lot, namely the Unquity house, has just like a glacier slowly moved in behind that garage there, pushed the fence down, trash has accumulated. So I'm glad that this is happening, that you're looking at that situation, looking at the entire perimeter. I think you may also know that this site is former mill. And if you're on the Mattapan bank, looking back of it, you see a lot of old foundation stone along that bank. Clearly a heavier foundation than what it's supporting right now. So it has a lot of curious and interesting features. And as far as the drainage and runoff problem, the problem I just mentioned seems to me the most significant one I'm aware of. I don't know the site that well because it's hard to get onto it from the Parkway. There's a locked gate. But yes, it has a lot of river frontage. And I think doing work here will have a lot of payback, a lot of reward in terms of environmental quality.
And Tom, what you were speaking of, we actually were able to, it's very hard to navigate this site because there's that chain link fence that extends all the way around. So access is pretty tough. But if we were actually up in this corner of the parking lot where you can see that head wall over the fence.
It's a stormwater outfall.
Yeah.
It's on the town's drainage net.
Yeah, you can. It flows down here, and there's also a fence there. So you're.
Yes.
We try to come up in this way, but it's a challenge. It's certainly a challenge.
I'll tell you, at the rear lot line of 531 Elliott, there is a gate, but then you're on that lot. You're not on your lot anymore.
Yep.
But from that gate, you can get to that big piece in back, marked 0 Elliott, and I believe that is DCR land, and that is a valuable piece of riparian natural area there.
Yeah.
It has a big grove of, I believe they're adventive oriental plane trees. They're not the native sycamores, they're the spreading plane trees. But I don't know, I'm certainly pleased to hear that this might happen. Sounds good. So Devin, we will see you on the 28th about 10 in the morning.
Great.
Perfect. All right. Thanks all. Anything else on the agenda?
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Philip, I've got the wrong agenda, so I think that's it, right?
That's it, yes. John, are we seeing Glover School on the 28th as well?
No.
Okay. I just didn't want to not put it on if we were. Okay, so we have 3 items for the 28th.
3 or 4?
3.
We've got 77 Neponset Valley. We've got
Then
1072.
Oh, the MRE makes 4.
We have Brush Hill Road, and then we have 30 Curtis Road.
Oh, okay, so 3. Okay.
John, if I may, just as a follow-up to Philip's question, there was mention of the September 28th site visit when we were speaking with the Glover PTO folks. I wonder if they thought that we did in fact want to come on the 28th.
Yeah, I had it in my notes as well.
That who said there would be a site visit on the 28th?
I believe it was
we don't have a proposal. We have no idea what they're going to do with the field, and neither do they. I grew up around there, so I lived there in my youth. So it was so if anybody wants to see it, that's fine. But without a proposal, what are we looking at?
I'm just saying that there was mention of the 28th site visit to Ellie and Isabel, and I was under the impression that we were going to be going. So I don't know if they were also under that impression. It might be one
Maybe was it
clarification.
something that I said. I certainly, if
I don't have it in my notes.
You what?
I do not have it in my notes.
No, I don't. We don't have anything to inspect.
77.
All we're doing is supporting the resolution to support their application to rehab the field, but there's no plan. That if anybody feels, I try to do this by consensus. If anybody wants to put it on to look at it, I'll certainly go. But I'm not sure what we're looking at.
No, I don't feel the need, because I was just there last week, and am also very familiar with the site. But if others in the commission are interested, I certainly would also go and enjoy the visit.
I didn't note down that you said we're going to visit here, and I did note the other ones.
That I said we were going to visit?
Right. I didn't hear you say that because I didn't note it down. I noted 3 site visits for the 28th, but I didn't write this one down because I don't think you ever said that we would go.
Right. Tom and I probably have the same 3: 77 Neponset, 1072 Brush Hill Road, and MRE.
Yeah.
I don't see a need to go. Wendy, if you do, then we'll take a vote to see whether or not we can go visit, but I'm not sure what we're looking at.
No, like I said, I do not feel the need for myself. I'm just saying, and Ingrid also heard, my understanding is that there was mention of it when we were speaking with the 2 of them. So my concern is that they might be standing there waiting for us.
How about this? We let them know that we won't, but once we have a plan, we would like to take a site walk with them. Would that make sense?
That sounds awesome.
That's good. So will you reach out to them and tell them that?
Absolutely. I'll take care of that tomorrow.
All right, good. Thanks, Philip. Okay, and no other, or is there any other new business?
I'd just like to mention that I think you can see the picture behind me. That's a humpback whale that was off Castle Island. And do you notice the funny markings that are in the front on the left? Those are wounds from a propeller.
Really?
That's the rotary motion of a propeller cutting into a whale. And while I was there photographing it, I didn't note what that was, and I never did figure it out. Somebody else said to me, that's a propeller mark. And it didn't seem to affect the whale's behavior, but it may have been injured that day because it was in the busiest part of the harbor and it was actively feeding. It would dive down and then come up mouth first around the fish. And it was quite a show and attracted a lot of other boats, including Godzilla. So if you want to eat in Boston Harbor, watch out for those propellers.
Okay. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it looked like it just cut into the blubber without getting into the muscle underneath.
Yeah.
But at the rear, there was a little bit of pink where blood was coming through. And it stuck me in a whale, I guess.
Something's going on with their feeding patterns, Tom, because last week for the first time that anybody can remember, and I go back 78 years, 79 years in this area, you saw two whales breach off East Sandwich Beach. Never before. So they're obviously they're feeding, they had full tummies, and they were as happy as could be.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that they're coming back into the circle with us, so to speak.
Yeah,
if you see them in the harbor, you think there's no other fish but that. Every other fish has to go to the back of the line.
Yeah.
This is,
They've been going up the Cape Cod Canal now too.
I think that we have our friends at the Neponset River Watershed Association to thank for the resurgence in humpback whales and seriously, all the restoration efforts that they've been doing with restoring the anadromous fish runs.
Well, somebody told me something interesting, that the reason you don't see any lobster pots in the harbor anymore is because they were dependent on the outfalls. They were eating the crap. It is true that you can motor all over the harbor and you hardly see any pots, any moorings for pots. Where it used to be, you saw dozens of them everywhere. And I guess
they're everywhere. Are you kidding? They're booby traps.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's funny. I think the reason there are fewer pots is that there's fewer lobsters and people aren't bothering with them anymore. But that's just a guess.
All right, guys, are we ready to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Sorry for
second.
tonight's delay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Philip?
I'll say.
All right, good.
Sorry for tonight's delay.
Oh, no, that's not on you. That's on me, I think. So I apologize, but we got through it. So thank you, Phil, for your help.
We'll hang it on Steve.
There we go. Blame it on Steve. You always blame it on someone not there.
Steve.
That'll teach him to go away. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. See you all on the 28th.